Chapter 1961. As Chu Li held the star stone, he felt his heavenly star insight skill circulating rapidly, wanting to devour it. He quickly stopped the circulation of the heavenly star insight skill to prevent it from devouring the star stone. He could not wait to devour it, but he could not do it now, especially in front of Deng Lu. Deng Lu quickly reached out to help the old man up, and a wisp of inner energy entered his body to help him heal. At the same time, he took out a jade bottle, opened the cork, and poured out 2 crimson pills, which he stuffed into the old man's mouth. Blood was still gushing out of the old man's mouth, and he was about to spit out the pills when Deng Lu quickly tapped his chest twice. The blood that was gushing out stopped, and the old man swallowed the spirit pills along with the blood. Chu Li sized up the old man and watched as a strange force surged out of his stomach and quickly circulated through his body. It expelled the chaotic force, suppressed the surging blood, and quickly calmed his body. This spirit pill was indeed extraordinary to be able to suppress such serious injuries. Deng Lu's inner energy also quickly entered and combined with the power of the spirit pill, forming an even more mysterious force that quickly nourished the old man's body. His already deteriorating organs were rapidly recovering their vitality. 15 minutes later, Deng Lu released his hand and allowed the old man to sit cross-legged and circulate his energy. White steam rose from the top of their heads as if they were sweating profusely. Chu Li and Sun Mingwei did not leave and only watched from the side. Seeing Deng Lu release his hand and stand up, Chu Li smiled and said, as expected of Mount Spirit Wonder, "The spirit pill is extraordinary. I originally planned to let him rest in bed for a few months, but I didn't expect him to recover so quickly. I'm impressed. I'm more impressed by young Master Chu's cultivation level." Deng Lu shook his head and said solemnly, "Hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. I've been disrespectful." He was shocked by the depth of Chu Li's cultivation level. In just a short period of time, Uncle Jing had been severely injured to such an extent. If he did not plead for leniency this time and did not use the star stones in exchange, Uncle Jing would definitely die. His martial arts might even be crippled, and his body would also be crippled. Then, he would not be able to live for more than a few days. At first, he thought that Chu Li was just an enlightened master from the lower realm. No matter how strong he was only a rank 1 celestial recognition master. Although he was able to kill the great Asuras, it was all thanks to the efforts of the Taiyue Hall. Chu Li was just lucky. As for the 4 great Asuras from the lower realm, most of them were killed by Sun Mingwei, who sacrificed herself to bring the great Asuras down with her. However, when he saw Uncle Jing's injuries, he realized that he had underestimated Chu Li. If they were to really fight, he really had no confidence. He would not make a move if he was not confident. This was his principle, so even if he was filled with anger and murderous intent, he would still not make a move. He could only get to know Chu Li well first. It would be best if he could befriend him and then deal a fatal blow at a critical moment. Chu Li smiled and said, "Then there's no problem now, young Master Deng can rest assured." "Yes." Deng Lu smiled and said, "Young Master Chu, are you staying in the Outland?" Chu Li smiled and said, "The Asuras below are about to launch a large-scale invasion. I'm going to deal with them down there." Deng Lu sighed and shook his head. "These Asuras really deserve to be killed. They're causing trouble in the world. It's best to kill them all. These creatures that exist for killing should not be left in the world." Chu Li said, "With the help of a celestial being, we should be able to defeat them. If the combined forces of the 2 realms can't deal with them, then there's really no hope. We'll all become ghosts under the blades of the Asuras." Yes. Deng Lu sighed and said, "It's a pity that I can't descend and help young Master Chu." Chu Li smiled and said, "Young Master Deng is such an important person. How can you make a move unless it's a critical moment? We'll be the vanguard." The 2 of them spoke hypocritically. Sun Mingwei shook her head and said, "It's getting late. I should take my leave. Chu looked up at the sky and smiled. It's getting late, I should take my leave. Then I'll take my leave. Deng Lu closed fist saluted and smiled at Sun Mingyue. Miss Sun, please excuse me. Sun Mingyue waved her hand. Deng Lu helped the old man up and the two of them fluttered away. This guy is really hypocritical, Sun Mingyue said. He has a honeyed mouth and a dagger in his heart. I really want to finish him off with a punch. She could see that Deng Lu was smiling, but his heart was filled with malice. He wanted to find a chance to deal with Chu. If it was someone else, he would have succeeded and killed him. Such a hypocritical person was more annoying than a simple evil person. They wanted to kill him even more. Chu smiled and said, as the young hill master, this performance is passable. He can't just shout and kill. This method is more skillful. It's a pity that he met us. He's unlucky. He'll eventually meet a ghost if he walks too much at night. Sun Mingyue said. Chu said, we still have to be careful of this guy. We can't be careless. His martial arts is good too. He doesn't dare to fight me, Sun Mingyue said. Although Spirit Wonder Mountain is strong, it's weaker than Great Light Surpassing State. He doesn't have the gut. The more hypocritical a person was, the more cowardly they would be, and the more they would not dare to act recklessly. They would be extremely cautious in their actions, and they would not make a move unless they were absolutely confident, lest they suffer a fierce backlash. This time, Chu had heavily injured the old man, and it was a wake-up call for them. Chu nodded slowly. Sun Mingyue was very good at reading people. She had seen through Deng Lu. Deng Lu fluttered away with the old man. After walking for 10 miles, he stopped in a forest and sat on the ground. He did not care about his flawless white robe and let the old man sit cross-legged first. He sat behind the old man and pressed his palms on his back. The two of them channeled again and soon, white steam rose from the top of their heads. After an hour, he released his palms and let out a long sigh. The old man also let out a long sigh and exhaled a murky black gas that hit the bushes in front of him. All the trees and weeds that came into contact with the black gas quickly withered and died in the blink of an eye. Young master, Chu is so powerful. The old man's voice was hoarse and low. We can't fight him. How powerful is he? Deng Lu asked coldly. His feminine red lips were tightly pursed and the corners of his mouth were curled downwards. His temperament suddenly became ruthless and cold. The old man sighed. Young master, you can't even take one move from him. Is he really that powerful? Deng Lu frowned. The old man smiled bitterly. I didn't expect him to be so powerful, especially his palm energy. It's as if he has his own soul. It's really strange. This time, he was merciful. Otherwise, my soul would have died. How can we kill him? Deng Lu asked coldly. The old man thought about it and shook his head. I can't think of a way. Even if the Hill Master takes action personally, I'm afraid he won't be able to defeat him. Deng Lu stared into his eyes as if trying to discern the truth. If that's the case, we can't attack him? The old man shook his head slowly. Avoiding him is the best plan, or we can kill him with a borrowed knife. Let's not do it ourselves and don't expose ourselves. Young master, you didn't expose your killing intent. That's the most brilliant move. Deng Lu scoffed and smiled. Even if you want to kill, you must kill with a smile. That's the highest realm of killing. Killing without leaving a trace is the strongest. The old man nodded in agreement. He has Sun Mingyue by force, so he'll definitely get into big trouble. There's no need for us to do it ourselves. Let's wait and see, Deng Lu said in a low voice. Chapter 1962. Sun Mingyue took out a pouch and passed it to Chu. Chu took it and knew without opening it that there were 3 star stones inside. Although I have these, they're quite precious and I can't bear to give them up. Sun Mingyue shook her head. I'll think of another way. Chu waved his hand. These are enough. He did not want Sun Mingyue to worry about this anymore. Star stones were treasures in the outland and could not be obtained easily. He had been greedy enough to get these, so he would have to think of another way to get more. He did not want to trouble Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue asked, "Why do you want them? You don't need them anymore, do you?" Chu Li replied, "Star stones can help me predict the future." "I see." Sun Mingyue nodded. "All right, I'll see if there's a chance." Chu Li smiled. "Do you have a message for Li Meng? Or a letter to her? That would be against the heavenly rules." Sun Mingyue shook her head and sighed. "The heavenly rules can't be violated, unlike you." She envied Chu Li for this. The heavenly rules were not essential to him, and the outland would have to pay a higher price to control him. This was a price that the Elder Society did not want to pay, so Chu Li was very free. Chu Li nodded. "Then I'll send a message." Sun Mingyue said, "There's nothing much to say. Li Meng is a very smart girl, and with your help, she can support the Holy Church. She should find an heir before she ascends." As the two of them spoke, two women floated over. One of them was Liang Yueying, and the other was a stunning beauty who was only slightly inferior to Sun Mingyue. She was dressed in an emerald green gown and looked to be about 30 years old. Chu Li was very sensitive to age, so he knew that this woman was more than 100 years old. Liang Yueying gave Sun Mingyue a look. Sun Mingyue raised her eyebrows and gave a fist salute. "Greetings, Masters Junior Zhong." The emerald gown woman was Zhong Jinghua, her master's junior. She did not ascend from the lower realm, but was a pure outland. She had entered the great light surpassing state since she was young, and her cultivation level was very high. Although she was inferior to Master Song Wanqing, her status was higher. Zhong Jinghua waved her hand and said indifferently, "I heard that you're involved with someone from the lower realm, so I came to take a look." As she spoke, she did not even look at Chu Li as if he did not exist. She only stared at Sun Mingyue as she spoke. After she finished speaking, she turned her head to look at Chu Li. She lifted her fair and pretty chin and lowered her almond-shaped eyes as she looked down at Chu Li. She had a slender figure and was slightly taller than Chu Li, which was why she could look down at him from above. Chu Li looked at her calmly and gave a fist salute. "I'm Chu Li, greetings, Senior Zhong." When he saw that this woman had come with ill intentions, it was obvious that she was at the great light surpassing realm. Finally, he could not help but intervene. Zhong Jinghua waved her hand and said calmly, "There's no need to act friendly. Are you Chu Li?" Chu Li smiled nonchalantly and nodded. "Yes." "Do you intend to ascend here?" Zhong Jinghua asked. Chu Li smiled. "I don't need to ascend here." "Then will you always stay here?" Zhong Jinghua was stunned for a moment before she asked coldly. She felt suffocated as she was inadvertently contradicted and her momentum was shaken. What a despicable fellow! Chu Li replied, "I won't." Zhong Jinghua took a deep breath and said coldly, "That's it then. Since you won't be staying here, don't disturb Ming Yu's heart and make her unable to calm down and cultivate. She's at her golden age and her cultivation level is improving by leaps and bounds. She mustn't be distracted or she'll regret it for the rest of her life if her cultivation is delayed." Chu Li smiled. "Does Senior Zhong mean that Ming Yu and I will be separated?" "That's right," Zhong Jinghua said. "If you're thinking about her, then let go. Don't come to the outland to disturb her heart and stay in the lower realm. This isn't a place for you." Chu Li frowned and said, "It seems that Senior Zhong doesn't like people from the lower realm." "That depends on who they are," Zhong Jinghua scoffed. "If they're disciples from great light surpassing, we'll welcome them with open arms. Disciples from great light surpassing are a family. If they're from other sects, we won't welcome them as they'll be our enemies. If they were enlightened masters who ascended from the lower realm, they would have a bright future. If they were ordinary grandmasters, they would have a bright future too. After all, the lower realm was more dangerous than the outland and it was a better place to hone one's mind. Previously, Only perfected grandmasters and enlightened masters could ascend to the grandmaster's boundary. When these people reached the grandmaster's boundary, they would grow up to be a master of their own. Now that the grandmaster's boundary had relaxed the entry requirements, the people who ascended were not as powerful, but enlightened masters were still top-notch talents. This was equivalent to suppressing the status of the Outland's native. As a native of the Outland, there was still resistance and hostility deep in their hearts. Chu Li said, "If I don't let go, what will happen to great light surpassing?" Zhong Jinghua said coldly, "For Mingyu's future, you need to cut off your emotions with the sword of wisdom." Chu Li said slowly, "If that's the case, I can't come to great light surpassing in the future?" "That's right," Zhong Jinghua said. "Moreover, Mingyu is about to go into isolated cultivation and won't be able to come out again. You'll come here in vain, so don't waste your time and just stay down there." Masters Junior Zhong. Sun Mingyue frowned. She knew that Chu Li could handle it, so she did not interrupt to avoid making things worse. This was not the time to be emotional. If she acted impulsively, things would get out of hand. However, when she heard how Zhong Jinghua treated Chu Li, she could not stand it anymore and interrupted her. Zhong Jinghua looked at Sun Mingyue and said calmly, "Mingyu, you're still young. You're placing too much emphasis on relationship. After a few decades, you'll understand that relationships aren't everything. They're just an adjustment to life and are dispensable." Sun Mingyue said, "Masters Junior Zhong, I'll take care of my own affairs. This isn't just about you. Your achievements are related to the future of great light surpassing. How can you be careless?" Zhong Jinghua said gently, "You have the potential to become the sect leader of great light surpassing." Sun Mingyue shook her head gently. "I'm not that ambitious," Zhong Jinghua said. "If you become the sect leader, you'll become an elder of the elder society. You'll be able to decide the life and death of many people. You can even decide the life and death of the next realm. Do you want to be a chess piece and be manipulated by others?" She turned to look at Chu Li. "Chu Li, you don't want to ruin Mingyu's future, do you? She has a bright future ahead of her. She's beautiful, talented, and skilled in martial arts. She's definitely qualified to become the future sect leader." Chu Li frowned. "You're not fooling me, are you?" Zhong Jinghua scoffed. "You can't just say something like that. I know you're powerful. You're the first person to become an enlightened master in 1,000 years. However, this is the Outland, not your world. You're not invincible. No matter how powerful you are, you can't give Mingyu a better future. If you're deeply in love with her, then wait. 10 years later, you can continue your relationship. Mingyu will come out of isolation then. 10 years. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "Do you only care about your relationship and ignore Mingyu's future?" Zhong Jinghua said coldly. Sun Mingyue frowned at Chu Li. Chu Li said, "I believe that even if we see each other often, her future won't be affected." Chapter 1963. Zhong Jinghua grew more disgusted with Chu Li. In her opinion, Chu Li was too selfish. For his own selfish desires, he did not care about Sun Mingyue's future. He only cared about himself and not Sun Mingyue. A man like Chu Li was not worthy of Sun Mingyue. Her heart sank and she glared at Chu Li. "So, you won't let go?" Chu Li shook his head. "No. Then don't blame us for being ruthless," Zhong Jinghua said coldly. "Don't regret it. Do you really think that you're the world's #1 master in the lower realm, and that you're invincible and fearless in the Outland?" Chu Li turned to look at Sun Mingyue. "You should go back first." Sun Mingyue said, "Forget it, you should leave." Chu Li looked at her in shock. Sun Mingyue sighed. "I can't just watch you fight with surpassing state. Whether you win or lose, it'll be a failure. If you win, what will the other disciples of surpassing state think of me? If you lose, will I have to fall out with surpassing state?" Chu Li nodded slowly. "You're right." Zhong Jinghua smiled. "Mingyue, you're indeed a leader. You're decisive. When it's time to give up, you'll give up. Sun Mingyue said, Masters Junior Zhong, if surpassing state makes things difficult for Chuli, I'll leave. The outland is big, there'll be a place for us. Don't worry. Zhong Jinghua smiled. As long as you let go, why would we make things difficult for him? Sun Mingyue looked at Chuli and sighed. Looks like our fate ends here. We'll meet again in 10 years. If you still remember me, we'll meet again here. Have you really decided? Chuli frowned. Are you really going to give up your feelings for the sect? Yes. Sun Mingyue said, feelings are illusory and can change at any time. Only the sect and the future are fundamental. I don't want to be a sect leader, but I want to work hard to improve my martial arts. I have no distractions. I hope you can fulfill my wish. If that's the case, I'll fulfill your wish. Chuli nodded slowly. I wish you a bright future. He turned to look at Zhong Jinghua. Senior Zhong, Mingyue wants to focus on isolated cultivation and can't meet other men. Can your sect stop her? Of course. Zhong Jinghua said, we will spread the news that Mingyu is in closed-door cultivation and will not see anyone. Chuli calmly replied, even those big shots. Don't worry, no one can force our light-surpassing realm. Zhong Jinghua said, 10 years later, if your feelings are still there, I won't stop you. Chuli slowly nodded and said, then let's wait and see. If your esteemed sect goes back on your word, then don't blame me for pestering you endlessly. After all, I can freely travel between the realm beyond heavens and that world. Zhong Jinghua's face darkened. She was extremely displeased with Chuli's threat. However, when she thought about how depressed Chuli must be right now, she could not be bothered to argue with him. She scoffed and said, although I'm a woman, I can keep my promises. Don't worry, you should leave now. Sun Mingyue looked at him deeply and sighed, let's meet again in 10 years. Chuli took a deep look at Zhong Jinghua and then at Liang Yueying. Suddenly, he let out a long laugh and turned into a stream of light before disappearing into the distance. However, his laughter did not stop and was deafening. Zhong Jinghua's face darkened. She furrowed her brows and looked in the direction where Chuli disappeared. Liang Yueying's face turned pale and she swayed slightly. Sun Mingyue gently supported her and channeled some inner force into her to calm her surging blood and chaotic inner energy. Liang Yueying looked in the direction where Chuli disappeared with lingering fear. She turned her head and said, Junior sister Sun, he has such a cultivation level. She did not expect Chuli's cultivation level to be so profound and unfathomable. Just his laughter had caused her blood to surge and her inner energy to go into chaos. She could not resist at all. If they were to really fight, she would not be able to withstand a single move. She looked at the gloomy Zhong Jinghua and knew that Masters Junior Zhong must be in a bad mood. Light-surpassing realm would undoubtedly offend Chuli. She did not expect Chuli to have such a profound cultivation level. Once he went against light-surpassing realm, it would be a big problem. Masters Junior Zhong must be regretting that her words were too harsh and direct. She was not tactful enough. Sun Mingyue said, Masters Junior Zhong, don't worry. He won't harm us. He still has that much magnanimity. Zhong Jinghua forced a smile. I didn't expect him to be so powerful. Chuli had been circulating the life and death scripture, so his cultivation level was only 10 to 20% of his appearance. This laughter was a warning. If light-surpassing realm went back on its words, he would not be polite. Sun Mingyue said, he deserves the title of the world's #1. It's rare in the world. Back then, he killed almost all the great Azuras. If you didn't use the indiscriminate destruction technique, would he have been able to kill them? Zhong Jinghua asked with a frown. Sun Mingyue shook her head. If I wasn't there, he wouldn't have been trapped by the great Azuras. It wouldn't have been difficult for him to kill them alone. I'm the one who got him into trouble. I see. Zhong Jinghua nodded slowly. She then calmed herself down and said, forget it. No matter how powerful he is, we can't count on him. We still have to rely on our own disciples from light-surpassing realm. Mingyue, we're counting on you. It'll be best if you can become the sect leader. Sun Mingyue smiled faintly. Masters Junior Zhong thinks too highly of me. I'm innately weak and can't become the sect leader. Masters Junior Zhong, it's best if you can dispel this idea as soon as possible so that you won't be too disappointed. Why are you innately weak? Zhong Jinghua was displeased. With your qualifications, you were once the leader of a religion. You're the best candidate to be the sect leader. Sun Mingyue replied, I'm someone from the lower realm. That alone is enough to cut off all hope. No one said that the sect leader can't be someone from the lower realm. Zhong Jinghua scoffed. Sun Mingyue smiled and did not refute. Zhong Jinghua gritted her teeth. We're going to make an exception. So, Mingyue, you must work hard. Sun Mingyue looked in the direction where Chu Li had disappeared and shook her head with a smile. Zhong Jinghua said, I'll immediately announce that you're in isolated cultivation for a long period of time. You won't meet outsiders. Mingyue, are you really going to cultivate in isolation? Of course, Sun Mingyue replied. That's good. Zhong Jinghua nodded. Let's go. Let's go back early. Yes. Sun Mingyue and Liang Yueying followed her into the mountain range on the opposite side and disappeared from light-surpassing realm. Chu Li sat in his bedroom in a small courtyard. There were 4 azure star stones in front of his knees. Under the moonlight, they emitted a hazy blue light like the stars in the sky. It made people want to stare at them. After staring at them for a while, Chu Li slowly closed his eyes and the omniscient mirror began to flash. As time passed, the 4 star stones suddenly turned into 4 rays of blue light and shot between Chu Li's eyebrows, disappearing in a flash. The 4 rays of blue light entered his mind and appeared in the void of his mind. The round mirror in the sky suddenly flashed and welcomed the 4 rays of blue light. The blue light entered the mirror and began to flicker continuously. The blue light completely covered the surface of the mirror. The heavenly star insight technique circulated in his mind. The blue light slowly converged and completely entered the round mirror. Then, the surface of the mirror became clear and bright. It was faintly discernible, as if it was about to completely merge with the void of his mind. Chapter 1964. The pattern of the heart of Azura appeared in his mind again, and he started to deduce it with the heavenly star void insight technique. Bang! It was like a sudden clap of thunder had exploded in his mind. His head felt like it was about to explode, and intense pain assaulted him. His vision darkened, and he nearly fainted. Vairocana, the great light Buddha, the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, the supreme Vajrapani, and the heavenly demon began chanting the Buddhist scriptures loudly. Lotus flowers danced in their minds, suppressing the tremors in the void of their minds. It took a while before they gradually calmed down, and the headache gradually disappeared. He heaved a long sigh of relief. His face was as pale as paper, and his eyes flickered. He knew that he had begun to touch upon the mysteries of the heart of Azura, which was why there was such a backlash. Previously, the heavenly star void technique had been desperately trying to deduce it, but it had not produced such a strange phenomenon. Clearly, it was unable to comprehend the profoundness of the heart of Azura. It was like trying to fish for the moon in the water, a futile effort. However, such a strange phenomenon was troublesome. He closed his eyes and activated the heavenly star void insight technique again. The pattern of the heart of Azura flashed again. Boom! Thunder exploded in the void of his mind once again. This time, it was even more violent than the last time. The void in his mind felt like it was about to shatter into pieces. The pain was several times more intense, and the darkness was about to engulf him in an instant. Luckily, Mahavairocana's immobility scripture circulated with the other scriptures, slowing it down and allowing him to maintain consciousness. He then activated the scriptures to suppress the tremors in his mind. After a long while, He opened his eyes, drenched in cold sweat. His face was deathly pale, and he actually felt weak. He smiled bitterly. Who would have thought that it would end like this? He had originally thought that once his heavenly star insight technique reached a certain level, he would be able to deduce the profoundness of the heart of Azura and then find a way to destroy the heart of Azura, completely eliminating Azura from the world. He did not expect that there would be such a powerful backlash. It was as if it came from the heavens and earth. It was the true heavens and earth, and not the outer heavens. The power of the backlash was so strong that he couldn't resist it at all. The intense pain was so excruciating that he wanted to die. He still had lingering fears and didn't dare to do it again in a short period of time. He shook his head. His wishful thinking had failed. He frowned and muttered to himself. How could he restrain such a backlash? It seemed like he had to find a solution from the heavenly star void technique. He began to search for the answer from the heavenly star jade stamp. Star heavens and void technique. When the heavenly star void art was cultivated to the highest level, consummation, one could use the heavenly star void art's power to use the art of deception, which could hide from the heavens. It was like forming a small black room, where one could derive the secrets of the world without being detected by the world. This required him to cultivate the heavenly star void technique to its peak, and he was still a long way from reaching that peak. There were a total of 9 levels of the heavenly star void technique, and he was only at the 7th level. Previously, he had not been able to clearly sense the level of the heavenly star void technique. He had been muddle-headed and muddled. Only after reaching the 7th level could he clearly sense where his level was. This could be considered the uniqueness of the heavenly star void technique. Master, are you ready for dinner? Xueling's crisp voice rang from outside. Chu Li slowly said, Come. Xue pushed open the door and walked in gracefully with a lunchbox in her hand. She opened the lunchbox and placed the dishes on the table. She raised her head and saw that Chu Li did not look well. Chu Li shook his head and walked to the dining table. He took the chopsticks and started eating. After he finished eating quickly, he said to Xueling, who was cleaning up the dishes, Set up the brush and ink later. I want to write a few letters. Yes, master, Xian replied. Her movements were light, graceful, and clean. She quickly ground the ink and laid out the paper and brush. Chu Li activated the heavenly star void technique again while she was busy. When Xueling's report was completed, he went to the front of the desk and began to write. His brush moved like a dragon. First, he wrote 10 envelopes. Then, he began to write on a piece of paper. In one breath, he wrote 10 letters and sealed them. Send them one by one, Chu Li said. Can the protectors of the public house send them? Technically, it would be faster if he sent them directly. However, he was too big of a target and too powerful. If he were to move, it might interfere with God's plan. That was why he needed the protectors of the public house to send them. No problem. Xueling read through the 10 letters and knew who they were for. Her pretty face tensed up and she said sternly, I will send the best guards to deliver them. Chu Li nodded. Don't let anything happen. Yes, Xian nodded. Chu Li said, Get the protectors of the public house to gather as soon as possible. They are not allowed to leave the town or take on any missions. They must return to the public house within 10 days. This is a death order. Master Shao Taiying will issue the order. Yes, Xian agreed. Chu Li waved his hand. Xian left the room. Chu Li went to the imperial house of Fairy's capital and talked to Shao Qi. The imperial court was stable. Suan was a good emperor. Although he said that he would not be the emperor and wanted to cultivate, he insisted on going to the court. Although the government affairs were handed over to Shao Qi and the others, he had a photographic memory. He read the memorials before going to the court and could remember them. He would not make any mistakes. The next morning, Chu Li passed through the Divine Gate and arrived at the Outland. He appeared in a forest on 9th heaven. The surroundings were quiet. There were no signs of movement. There were no insects, birds, or beasts. As soon as Chu released his enlightened god field, all the animals were scared away. The weeds in the forest also wanted to grow legs and leave, so it was quiet. He sat on the top of an ancient tree and moved with the wind as he circulated the supreme true supreme diamond scripture. The supreme diamond in the void of his mind suddenly moved and opened his eyes. He opened his eyes too. He saw Sun Mingyue in a white dress. Sun Mingyue took off her white veil and revealed her beautiful face. She pursed her lips and smiled at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. Will we be discovered? No problem. Sun Mingyue shook her head and smiled. We met so soon. You're really brave. Chu Li smiled. Let's see if they can find out. As long as we don't stay in the same place, they won't find out. Sun Mingyue pursed her lips and smiled. She was indescribably relaxed and happy. But we can't underestimate Master and the others. It's better to be careful. The two of them put on a show in front of Zhong Jinghua and Liang Yueying without any flaws. They had great chemistry. More importantly, they could talk to each other in their mind. Therefore, they quickly cooperated with each other to play a breakup scene. They fooled Zhong Jinghua and Liang Yueying and found it quite interesting. Chu Li said, I've calculated the time and place of the Azura's appearance. It's going to be a tough battle. They might only arrive after a while. They're finally coming. The smile on Sun Mingyue's face disappeared. She frowned. Are you confident that you can destroy them? Chu Li smiled. This time, it should be no problem. He did not mention that it was thanks to her star stones. Otherwise, she would have to spend more effort to collect star stones. Sun Mingyue smiled. That's good. It'll be good if fewer innocent people die. Chu Li nodded slowly. When the Azuras descended, many innocent people would die. No matter how powerful he was, he could not avoid it. Therefore, he was filled with anger toward the Outland. However, he could not find a chance to take revenge or overturn the decision. Chapter 1965. There will be too many Celestials descending this time. Sun Mingyue frowned. Be careful. Like Chu Li, she was wary of the Celestials. These Celestials went to their own world with bad intentions. They were purely for the benefit of the Outland. They had to harm the original world, and might harm Chu Li or even secretly eliminate him. Chu Li nodded lightly. Let's stop here in case we get discovered. Sun Mingyue looked at him deeply and suddenly disappeared. Chu Li looked in the direction where she disappeared and disappeared too. It was almost impossible for the two of them to meet like this, because he would change to a different place every time, and no one would notice. Only Sun Mingyue could sense it, and Sun Mingyue had the ability to come out without anyone noticing. Even if the light-surpassing state could sense her leaving, it would be difficult to follow her. Chu Li could inform Sun Mingyue once he noticed someone was following him. He had the omniscient mirror and the cosmic insight skill. He could see and predict in advance, so it was difficult to be discovered. This way, everyone was happy. Before the evening sun had even set, beams of red light suddenly appeared in the sky. The beams of red light descended rapidly like meteors falling to the ground. After the beams of red light landed on the ground, they turned into 15 Azuras. Some of them appeared outside the city, some in the wilderness, some in the deep mountains, and some on the sea. There were all kinds of them, but each red light was 15 Azuras. After these Azuras landed, they did not rush to move. Instead, they first explored the surroundings. Soon, a group of celestial beings and grandmasters came up to them and surrounded them. After a fierce battle, almost all of the Azuras were killed, and there were very few who managed to escape the net. Even if there were, they were quickly killed by Chu Li and the enlightened masters. By daybreak, the land had regained its tranquility. All the Azuras had been beheaded and turned into the heart of Azura, returning to the Azura realm. Almost no innocent people were killed, but many grandmasters and celestial beings had ascended to the Outland. Dressed in white, Xue Ling floated out of Chongming Town gracefully. She arrived at a forest outside Chongming town. She gave a fist salute to the few enlightened masters who were standing in the void and said, "I've troubled all of you to come here for nothing." Tang Hui stood in the void and said slowly, "Miss Schwelling, when will Mr. Chu return? The young master is cultivating in seclusion somewhere else. I don't know when he will come out." Schwelling shook her head lightly. Her gaze swept across the few enlightened masters who were standing in the void. Before Master went into isolation, he had said that there was no need for all of you to be so courteous. He was only doing what he could. This time, Brother Chu accurately calculated the location of Azura. "I don't know how many people you've saved. Your merits are immeasurable. I should say thank you," Tang Hui said. Schwelling smiled. "Master said that the ones who did the hard work were the elders, so there's no need to thank us. Also, everyone needs to be prepared. The next time the Azuras come, they will be even fiercer and scarier." The expressions of Tang Hui and the other heavenly deities changed slightly as they slowly nodded. Schwelling curtsied and turned to leave. She walked on the bluestone street of Chongming town. Her body was tall and her footsteps were light. She was so proud that she wanted to shout out loud to let everyone know about her young master's merit. This matter was only known by the enlightened masters. It could not be spread. Outsiders did not know how much credit her young master had and how many people he had saved. It was too unfair. She mentioned it, but her young master had no intention of spreading it. It was as if he wanted to hide behind everyone and not let others know. Thinking of this, she shook her head but did not dare to disobey. She could only sigh and feel proud. At this time, Chu Li was at the peak of a mountain on the 9th level of the Outland. He looked at the sky with his hands behind his back. This time, he had calculated the time and place of Azura's arrival. He had severely injured Azura. The result was obvious. Great Azura would not let him go. They would definitely assassinate him. This time, Great Azura's assassination would be even stronger. He must be killed. Wherever he stayed, that place would become a battlefield between him and the Great Azura. In fact, the Great Azura might even attack his family directly. In order to guard against this, he immediately escaped into the sky beyond heaven. He had been predicting Great Azura's actions and had already vaguely predicted when they would come. He did not idle here. Instead, he began to build stone towers. He built one after another until he had built a total of 6 stone towers. They were scattered around and completely enveloped the mountain, turning it into his dojo. The 6 stone pagodas formed a 6-ru formation. Each of the stone pagodas was like a clone of Chu Li. Through the 6-ru formation, the 6 stone pagodas became one. Chu Li could feel that his power had increased by 6 times. If he used the sacrificial technique, his strength would increase by 60 times. It was enough to deal with Great Azura. The twilight deepened and the sky seemed to be covered in frost. The surroundings were quiet. 6 Great Azuras appeared silently in front of Chu Li. Chu Li stood on top of a stone tower and quietly looked at the 6 Great Azuras standing in the void. They were all middle-aged men. They were thin and did not look powerful. They had completely restrained their strength. After they restrained their force, they were undetected. The Outland could not detect them. This gave them enough time to kill Chu Li. Chu Li chuckled and shook his head. "There are only 6 of them. They can't kill me." "What else?" Another 4 Great Azuras appeared in the void behind Chu Li and stared at him coldly as if they were looking at a dead man. 10 Great Azuras, they really think highly of me, Chu Li said. One of the Great Azuras said quietly, "Chu Li, don't even think about having a Grandmaster's Supreme Level Master come over." Lu Xiai? Working mulberry. As soon as he finished speaking, he struck out with his palm. The other 9 Azuras also struck out with their palms at the same time. The palm energy was soundless but extremely violent. However, by the time the palm energy condensed, Chu Li had already disappeared from the stone tower and appeared above another stone tower. The expressions of the 10 Azuras darkened. They had already locked the void around them, so they could not use the void diversion technique or even light body technique. They could only face the attack head-on. However, Chu-Li had broken the void lock and appeared 20 meters away in an instant. Chu-Li heaved a sigh of relief. The 6 rarities formation was indeed the 6 rarities formation. Moreover, the stone tower was a rotary pagoda, so it was one with him and could lend him power. Therefore, he could easily change his body through the 6 rarities formation. The great Asuras struck out with their palms at lightning speed, but Chu-Li was unpredictable. None of their palms managed to hit him. Later on, the great Asuras realized that Chu-Li was able to move his body without being affected by the void lock because of these stone towers. Therefore, they vented their anger on the stone towers and wanted to destroy them first before killing Chu-Li. Bang 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 bang. The great Asura's palm energy collided with the stone towers as if they were hit by giant logs. However, the stone towers were stable and did not show any signs of breaking. The 6 stone towers were connected into one and breathed in and out the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, making them unusually sturdy. Chu-Li was filled with emotions. Once the rotary pagoda was condensed, his strength would increase tremendously. Coupled with the heavenly star insight skill and the 6 rarities formation, it could restrain the void lock. As long as the great Asuras did not force him to fight them head-on, he could easily remain undefeated. When the great Asuras appeared, the Outland would definitely react. When that happened, he could borrow the power of the Outland to kill these 10 great Asuras. If he killed these great Asuras, he might be able to severely injure the vitality of the Asura boundary and delay their attack on his world. P.S. Chapter 1966. Bam bam bam. The continuous sounds were earth-shattering. Chu-Li's figure moved freely on the 6 stone towers. In the end, 2 of the 10 great Asuras were guarding 1 stone tower. Only 2 stone towers were guarded by 1 person. Unfortunately, Chu-Li was more than capable of defending against 2 great Asuras. As the Chakram Pagoda reached the 9th level, his skills increased again and reached an unimaginable level. He could not fight against 10 great Asuras, but he could handle 2 of them with ease. Instead, he suppressed them to the point that they could not breathe. The 10 great Asuras were frustrated. Even though they were Asuras who were calm, cruel, and murderous, they were still shocked by Chu-Li's improvement. Their desire to kill him grew stronger. Bam! There was a thunderous explosion. A great Asura self-destructed. Wherever the red mist passed, the stone tower would crack and slowly collapse. Chu-Li frowned. He had underestimated the power of the heart of Asura. Under the 6 paths formation, all of the stone pagodas were connected as one with his aura, almost as if they were one. The power of 1 pagoda was the combination of the power of 6 pagodas and his power. Under such circumstances, they still could not resist the power of the heart of Asura. Chu-Li quickly took out 2 jade pendants. The jade pendants lit up in his palm and flew out to where the stone tower was. After the stone tower collapsed, the power of the 6 rarities formation dissipated quickly. The connection between the other 5 stone towers weakened and was about to disappear completely. The 6 rarities formation would be broken. This was the purpose of the great Asura's self-destruction. As long as the 6 rarities formation was destroyed, Chu-Li would not be able to break their void lock. They could only fight with force. They would definitely win and Chu-Li would definitely die. After the 2 jade pendants landed on the stone tower, a shadow suddenly appeared on the tower. It was faintly discernible and then disappeared from the tower. Then, an invisible force spread. The power that was initially weakened from the connection between the other 5 stone towers suddenly condensed and merged with Chu-Li. The 6 rarities formation was activated again. Although it was not as powerful as before, it still allowed him to move freely and was not suppressed by the void lock. The 9 Asuras could not control him. They could only watch as he moved freely in front of them. They gritted their teeth in hatred but could not do anything. Bang! Another explosion sounded. Another stone pagoda was on the verge of collapse. In the end, it cracked and collapsed. Chu gritted his teeth and took out 2 more jade pendants from his inner pocket. The jade pendants suddenly lit up and flew to the original position of the stone tower after they were activated. Then, the 6 Guardians formation was restored and he could move freely again. Bam bam bam! Another 3 Asuras self-destructed. The 3 stone pagodas cracked and collapsed again. Chu had no choice but to send out 6 jade pendants to stabilize the 6 Guardians formation. However, there was only 1 stone pagoda left in the 6 rarities formation. The other 5 stone pagodas had been replaced by jade pendants, so their power had been greatly reduced. Chu had only merged his power with 1 stone pagoda, so the difference in power was several times greater. Chu could only watch on helplessly. Even a great Asura was fighting so desperately, so he could only endure it. Fortunately, although the power of the 6 rarities formation was greatly reduced, he could still move freely. However, he did not appear on the stone pagoda anymore. Instead, he appeared in the void where the 5 stone pagodas used to be. 10 jade pendants flickered under his feet and he struggled to maintain the 6 rarities formation to resist the void lock. The eyes of the 5 Asuras were as red as flames. When they saw their companions self-destructing but still could not do anything to Chu, they could not help but feel frustrated. Their killing intent surged, and they did not care about anything else. Another great Asura was going to self-destruct. Once his last stone pagoda was destroyed, he would not be able to escape. Bang! In the end, Chu could not block this final explosion. Bang 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 bang! The jade pendants on the ground exploded one by one and turned into dust. The 6 rarities formation had been broken. 4 great Asuras surrounded him. Just as they were about to attack, Chu had already swung his sword lightly. One of the great Asuras was beheaded without any resistance. He did not even have the time to self-destruct. The faces of the other 3 were extremely gloomy. They looked at each other and were about to self-destruct. No matter how strong Chu was, he would not be able to withstand the power of the 3 of them self-destructing. 10 great Asuras could not do anything to Chu. Even if they could win in the end, they would not have the face to continue staying in the Asura realm. They might as well be more straightforward and completely destroy Chu so that his body and soul would never be able to reincarnate. Suddenly, Sun Mingyue's voice rang in his ears. "Let's go." Sun Mingyue had already taken advantage of the moment when the void lock had loosened and appeared beside him in an instant. The 2 of them held each other's hands and instantly, their power increased tremendously. Chu had already activated the sacrificial divine power, while Sun Mingyue had also activated the secret technique of great light. Bang! 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 3 dull sounds rang out almost at the same time. The red mist was boundless. Everywhere it passed, the stone pagodas turned into dust and mixed with the dust formed by the surrounding trees and stones. Not a single trace of the stone pagodas could be seen. The surroundings were bare and it was obvious that a great battle between top-notch masters had taken place here. Sun Mingyue and Chu appeared at the peak of a mountain. Chu's face was pale and so was Sun Mingyue's face under the white veil. Both of them were gasping for breath as they rejoiced after surviving a disaster. "What a bunch of lunatics!" Sun Mingyue sighed. "So many of them came looking for us. What are we going to do next time?" This time there were 10 great Asuras. Next time there would probably be 20 great Asuras. Although it was rare to see 20 great Asuras coming to kill one person, it was not impossible based on the determination of the great Asuras. Although there were many Asuras in the Asura realm and many great Asuras, losing 10 great Asuras at once was not a small number. In addition to the original 6, it was considered a small blow to their vitality. Chu shook his head. "Let's just go through one obstacle at a time," You'll have to find a big faction as soon as possible. Sun Mingyue frowned. If you continue fighting alone, it'll be difficult for you to survive even if your cultivation level is top-notch. Chu Li slowly nodded. After experiencing the power of the 6 rarities formation, he was not as afraid of great Azuras. If he could set up a few more 6 rarities formation next time, it would be enough to deal with 10 great Azuras. The later content of the Heavenly Star Insight skill was mostly about formations. Now that he had enough power and level, he could set them up. If the level of the Heavenly Star Insight skill was not high enough, he would not be able to set up most of the powerful formations. This was because they were too complicated and difficult to derive. Now that his Heavenly Star Insight skill had reached the 7th level, he could use the 6 rarities formation. Do I get any credit for killing great Azuras? Chu Li asked. Sun Mingyue nodded. Of course, but you're not a member of a faction and you don't belong to any force. You won't get any credit even if you do. Chu Li nodded and smiled. I can't get any, but you can. Sun Mingyue was stunned and pointed at herself. I'll get the credit? We'll split the reward equally. Chu Li smiled. That's a good idea. Sun Mingyue shook her head and smiled. But I don't want the reward. It's uncomfortable to hold it. You risked your life to win it. Chu Li glanced at her. Sun Mingyue could not help but laugh. All right. Let's see what rewards there are. I'll take whatever I need. Chapter 1967. We can't go on like this. Sun Mingyue pulled her dress elegantly and sat on a rock. What are you going to do? Chu Li replied. I want to understand the Outland better before anything else. Sun Mingyue raised her eyebrows and chuckled. Are you going to do the same thing again? She knew that Chu Li had the ability to change his appearance seamlessly. If Chu Li were to change into another person and wander around the Outland, no one would be able to detect his disguise. Chu Li shook his head. I need to figure out how many masters there are in the Outland. Challenge the entire Outland? Sun Mingyue frowned. That's not appropriate. The lifespan of the Outland was exceptionally long. As such, their cultivation level was naturally high. She had no idea how strong the top-notch masters of the Outland were, but they were definitely beyond imagination. Chu Li would only end up as a public enemy if he did that. It would not end well. Chu Li said, The Outland's attitude towards me is very strange. They've been resisting and guarding against me as if I'm an anomaly. They want to expel me from the Outland and not allow me to stay here. He was the most sensitive and could feel the invisible rejection. Whether it was the Elders Guild or the major sects, they were all rejecting him and deliberately ignoring him. He was indifferent to the rejection of the sky beyond heaven. Originally, he did not have any sense of belonging to this place as it was not his home. However, if he wanted to take revenge on the Elder Guild and change the decision of the Elders Guild, he would have to stay here. Sun Mingyue frowned and slowly nodded. Maybe it's because you've cultivated to become an enlightened master and can freely travel between the two worlds. That's why people are jealous. You're the only one who can do that. Even the elders of the Outland can't do it. Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingyue said, Chu Li, I understand what you're planning. Chu Li smiled. Sun Mingyue was smart and they had a tacit understanding. It was not surprising that she could guess his thoughts. You're too bold. Sun Mingyue sighed. I don't think you should do it forcefully. You're ambitious and you need to find a way out. Chu Li was deep in thought. Sun Mingyue was relieved when she saw that he had listened to her. When one's martial arts had reached Chu Li's level, everything could be solved with martial arts. Hence, his actions tended to be overbearing and direct. However, things were not that easy, and it was not easy to conquer people's hearts. Blindly being overbearing was a bad idea. However, at Chu Li's position, he was usually full of confidence, and it was difficult for him to listen to unpleasant words from others. Looks like we still have to break through the Rain Master Hall, Chu Li muttered. Sun Mingyue said, Only by entering the Hall of the Rain Master and using the Celestial Man to defeat the Celestial Man can you realize your idea. Chu Li sighed. The Hall of the Rain Master is not easy to enter. It's still much easier than challenging the Grandmaster realm all by yourself, Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li said, All right, I will think of a way. Where is the Hall of the Rain Master? Sun Mingyue took out a thick booklet and passed it to Chu Li. This is the information about the Hall of Rain Masters. Chu Li took it and frowned. Don't worry about these anymore. Focus on your cultivation. Don't lose sight of the bigger picture. I asked Senior Sister Liang to help me collect this. It didn't take me any effort, Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li said, We should meet less in the future so that you won't be put in a difficult position. Sun Mingyue glared at him. Regardless, come here once a month. I want to know about the Holy Church's situation. Chu Li nodded. I'll go back then, Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li said, Don't forget to claim your reward. Okay. Sun Mingyue waved her hand and fluttered away. Chu Li looked at the empty surroundings and sensed the invisible energy. It was the energy to kill great Asuras. He tried to send it into the Wheel Pagoda. Instantly, it transformed into the strange energy in the Wheel Pagoda. The Wheel Pagoda became more solid and heavy as if it was real. Moreover, it became more integrated with him, and it was difficult to tell them apart. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He did not expect them to be useful. The strange energy in the Wheel Pagoda was used to condense souls. Even if a remnant soul entered the Wheel Pagoda, it could be recovered through this strange energy. As long as there was a trace of soul energy, it could be recovered and resurrected. Originally, this strange energy was formed naturally through the Wheel Pagoda. It was slowly condensed bit by bit. Now that it had the energy to kill great Asuras, it suddenly increased by a lot and saved 10 years of effort. Chu Li entered an incomparably huge city, Spirit Light City. This city was 10 times bigger than Fairy's capital. The magnificent buildings were tall and gorgeous. Compared to this city, Fairy's capital seemed like a small town. Even the prosperity of the city was incomparable to Fairy's capital. The streets were bustling with people and carriages. The people around him looked no different from the people of the lower realm. They just had a longer lifespan. Their clothes were more gorgeous and beautiful, and they had a leisurely and carefree aura. Once one's lifespan was extended, they would naturally be more at ease. It was as if everything was in time and there was no need to rush. They could just take it slow. After all, they still had a long time ahead of them. The people who came and went were all leisurely. Even when they were bargaining with the shops on both sides of the street, they were still leisurely and unhurried. Chu Li shook his head as he watched them. He felt that it was a waste of time. He walked along the street that was paved with white jade. The ground was spotless, and the air was especially moist and fresh. Even in such a bustling city, the air was not affected by the people coming and going. He came to a restaurant that towered into the clouds. He went up the stairs to the 3rd floor and sat by the window to look down at the city. The ancient buildings below him were endless, and he could not see the end of them. He ordered a few dishes and 2 pots of wine. He drank alone and had a more leisurely aura. He took out the small thick booklet that Sun Mingyue gave him and began to study the information on the Hall of Rain Master. A lot of effort must have been put into this booklet. The information inside was extremely detailed. It included the location of the Hall of Rain Master, major events over the years, why it had declined in recent years, important people in the Hall of Rain Master, and even portraits. Through this, Chu Li could have a general understanding of the Hall of Rain Master. From this, he could formulate a plan to enter the Hall of Rain Master. He had already made up his mind that he must enter the Hall of Rain Master. If he could not enter the Hall of Rain Master, it would be difficult to achieve his goal. The Hall of Rain Master was the starting point of everything. He needed to put in effort to achieve it. As he drank the wine and occasionally took a few bites of food, He carefully read the information and deduced it in his mind, looking for flaws and loopholes. There were a total of 10 people written in the book. He decided to meet these people personally so that he could use the Heaven Star Insight technique to deduce their fates and find a way to get close to them. The dishes were exquisite. They looked, smelled, and looked good. The wine was like sweet rain, flowing smoothly down his throat. He could not help but exclaim. The lower realm was far inferior to this place. When it came to enjoyment, the lower realm and this place were like a village compared to a bustling city. This was the difference in history. The same skill that was honed for 100 years and 1,000 years was on a completely different level. They could not be compared. The people of the Outland looked down on the lower realm and looked down on it. It was not without reason. There was indeed a reason why they had the confidence. The Azura realm is restless again. They have already sent a large number of people to the lower realm. It's really lively. Suddenly, a loud laughter entered Chu Li's ears. Chapter 1968. These Azuras really don't know what's good for them. They really think we're afraid of them. Sigh. They're actually quite difficult to deal with. They're a huge problem for us. They're not a huge problem. If it weren't for the extraterrestrial demons, they wouldn't have had the chance to be so arrogant. We would have cleaned them up a long time ago. Shoo! Someone lowered his voice. Stop talking about the extraterrestrial demons. Everyone instantly went silent, and their fear was on the verge of bursting out. Oh right, do you have any thoughts of going down to the lower realm? Why would we go down there? A clear voice was heard. That place has probably become a battlefield. It's a mess. Nothing good will come out of it. If we're really destroyed by the Azuras, we'll lose a lot too. What's there to lose? Someone scoffed. It's better if no one from the lower realm comes up. Look at what it's like now. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry can come up to our Outland. It can't be helped. With these masters, our abilities can be strengthened too. It's already difficult enough with the extraterrestrial demons. Those damn Azuras are adding insult to injury. If we don't get more people to help, it'll be too difficult for us to deal with the Outland alone. These people won't be of much help even if they come up. They'll just die. They'll exhaust the Azura's abilities and hold them back so we can deal with the extraterrestrial demons. Actually, the Elders Guild did a good job this time. They lured the Azuras down to the lower realm. Someone lazily said, I've always hated the Elder Council, but this time, to be honest, I'm quite satisfied. As expected of a crafty old fox. That's true. Chu Li frowned and his expression darkened. He then shook his head. Humans were selfish. They wished they weren't the ones who died. They didn't care how others died. These words weren't worth getting angry over. They couldn't just go up and teach them a lesson. It was better to pretend he didn't hear it. However, he heard a key word, extraterrestrial demons. It seemed like the Outland didn't only have one opponent. There were also extraterrestrial demons. Who were these people? He had never heard of them. They were quite mysterious. He continued to study the thick booklet that Sun Mingyue had meticulously collected. Although the Rain Master Palace was weak, its strength was quite astonishing. There were a total of 10,000 people, and those below the second stage celestial level were not qualified to enter the Rain Master Palace. Even a stage 2 celestial might not necessarily be able to enter the hall of the Rain Master. They had to be outstanding among the stage 2 celestials. More importantly, they had to be of good character and come from a clean background. There was another rule that Chu Li could not avoid. The Hall of the Rain Master only accepted residents of the Outland and did not accept experts who had ascended. Among the 9 divisions, only the Thunder Pool accepted masters who had ascended. Unfortunately, Chu Li could not enter the Thunder Pool. The master of the Thunder Pool, Song Wuji, was there. If he entered, it would be like a sheep walking into a tiger's den. Chu Li shook his head. It was no wonder that the human realm beyond heaven looked down on his world. There were 10,000 second-stage celestials in the Rain Master Palace alone, and the Empyrean gods were only third-stage celestials when they ascended. They needed to cultivate step by step before they could step into second stage, first stage, or even transcendental stage. However, after the Empyrean gods entered the human realm beyond heaven, their speed of improvement would be very fast. It would not be a problem to reach first stage. As for whether or not they could become transcendental stage, it depended on the individual's aptitude. That was why the Empyrean gods who could ascend were valued, and that was why Sun Mingwei had such glory. The Rain Master Palace was responsible for summoning rain and controlled a unique spiritual energy. They could use this spiritual energy to condense a formation to control the rain in the world they were in. At first glance, it seemed like the methods of the gods, but it was actually not that magical. As long as the rain summoning formation was well managed, it would be done. The thunder pool was the same. In fact, it also controlled a unique type of spiritual energy. It did not have magic power, so it could control natural phenomena. The Rain Master Palace had a hall master, 2 deputy hall masters, and a front hall supervisor. The front hall supervisor could not be entered unless one was a first-stage celestial. It was a force that belonged directly to the hall master. There were about 2,000 people in the front hall supervisor, and they only listened to the hall master. The other 4 halls each had 2,000 people, some strong and some weak. The Rain Master Palace was weak because the hall master of the Rain Master Palace was heavily injured and cultivated in isolation. Now, there were only 2 deputy hall masters in charge. Although the 2 hall masters were supreme celestials, they were not as good as the hall master. Moreover, other than the hall master being heavily injured, the front hall supervisor also lost a group of masters, which greatly damaged its vitality. Therefore, the Rain Master Palace was suppressed by the other divisions. However, even if they were suppressed by the other divisions, the Hall of the Rain Masters was still the Hall of the Rain Masters. Not just anyone could enter. Although his martial arts skills were sufficient, he was not a native of the realm beyond heavens, so he was expelled. Chu Li frowned and sighed. He could guess the reason why the Rain Master Palace excluded people who ascended from the lower realm. Looking down on people from the lower realm was only one reason. After all, the enlightened masters who ascended usually advanced very quickly and could reach the first stage realm. The bigger reason was that people who ascended often had no worries and did not have a sense of belonging to the outland. It was easy for problems to arise and it was difficult to manage. If they were too strict, they would be forced to take risks out of desperation. This kind of unstable situation must be avoided. The Rain Master Palace must have suffered in this aspect. Chu Li could only express his helplessness. Everyone had their own interests. Ha ha! Suddenly, a burst of laughter rang out and shook the entire restaurant. Chu Li frowned and looked at the 4 young men at the table not far away. These 4 young men were the 4 who spoke earlier. They were dressed in embroidered clothes and had a luxurious aura. It was obvious that they were not ordinary people. They were laughing unscrupulously as if they had said a terrible joke. At this time, the restaurant was almost full. There were only 10 tables on such a large floor. They were far apart from each other, but it was still lively. After the people at the other tables glanced at them, they turned their heads and ignored them. They continued to eat and talk, letting them laugh unscrupulously. Chu Li frowned and ignored them. He continued to drink his wine and looked through the information of the Rain Master Palace. He studied it carefully and wanted to find a breakthrough. In the end, he took the portraits of the 10 people and looked at them. The Heavenly Star Insight skill was deducing these 10 people. Unfortunately, it was difficult to get any results just by looking at the portrait. He needed to see them in person to predict their fate and good or bad luck. Only then would he be able to find their flaws. In my opinion, we should destroy the lower realms to prevent them from continuously ascending and occupying our territory. From the looks of it, it seems like we want to turn our sky beyond heaven into the lower realms. A young man laughed and said, Azura, destroy them, it just so happens that we don't have to do anything. That's right, those people from the lower realm deserve to die. A young man in luxurious embroidered clothes clapped and laughed. Those people are not good people. They are like country bumpkins entering the city. Moreover, they are all fierce. They deserve to die. They are still of some use. They can die for the people of the Outland and be killed by Azura. Haha, the lower realm has been destroyed by Azura. Azura must have consumed a lot of their energy. Let's take action and destroy Azura. Chapter 1969. Sigh. Who doesn't want to do that? Unfortunately, these guys are scattered on every heaven. There aren't many on the 9th heaven, and most of them are on the lower 3rd heaven. Who has the patience to find these guys? If I become the sect leader, I'll definitely send away all the guys who ascended from the sect. What do they think this place is? How can they just let anyone come in? Damn it. Haha, if you want to be the sect leader, wait another 100 years. Your father is still alive and well. It's not your turn yet. No rush, no rush. There will always be a chance. A clear voice laughed. Anyway, it'll take a long time. By that time, the lower realm might already be occupied by Azura. It'll be good for Azura to occupy this broken place. Suddenly, screams were heard. The 4 young men who were talking all screamed as their palms were pierced into the table by a chopstick that suddenly appeared. This big restaurant was extremely grand. The tables and chairs were made of precious ironwood, which was hard and thick. Even a sword would not leave a mark on it. Just like that, half a chopstick was pierced into the table, along with a palm. Blood gushed out, and the 4 young men screamed. 8 middle-aged men stood up from the 2 tables next to them and quickly surrounded the 4 young men, keeping them in the circle. They looked around fiercely, and their eyes swept here and there like cold lightning. Ah! A young man let out an earth-shattering scream. He was trying to pull out half a chopstick. Once he moved, he let out an even more shocking scream, as if he was being cut into pieces. The expressions of the 3 young men beside him changed drastically. They looked at the chopstick that was pierced into their palms in horror and did not dare to move. Who are you? Tell me your name. A middle-aged man shouted coldly. The young castellan of the city of 10,000 swords is here. Another middle-aged man shouted. The young master of the flowing flower building is here. Another middle-aged man said. The young cliff master of the Wangqing cliff is here. An elder slowly scoffed in a deep voice. The young valley master of the Yellow Leaf Valley is here. The voices of the 4 people echoed in the restaurant, causing the entire restaurant to suddenly fall silent. The noise disappeared, and it was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Chu Li slowly put the thick booklet back into his pocket, poured himself a glass of wine, took a sip, and looked around. Seeing the reactions of the people around him, he knew that these 4 sects were not small sections. Otherwise, there would be no lack of first-grade celestials in the restaurant. He saw that the first-grade celestials in the restaurant had restrained their auras and were not saying a word. It was obvious that they wanted to watch the show. Ah! The young man screamed again. He could only feel a strange internal energy suddenly surging out from the chopstick. His entire body was in excruciating pain, as if he was being sliced by 1,000 blades. Otherwise, he, the dignified young city lord of the city of 10,000 swords, would not have let out such a humiliating scream. "Young city lord, let me do it," a middle-aged man said solemnly. The young man hurriedly said, "Quick, quick!" The middle-aged man was skinny, and his eyes were like lightning. He was like a cheetah, and his body was filled with explosive power. His cultivation had already reached the first grade, and he could move unhindered in the world. Yes, he responded. He gathered inner energy in his right hand and slowly reached out towards the chopstick. As soon as he touched the chopstick, there was a muffled bang. It was as if he had been hit by a galloping horse, and he was sent flying. Bang! He crashed into the vermilion pillar of the restaurant, and he was stuck to the pillar without moving. Dust fell from the roof beams. The middle-aged man's eyes were wide open, and his expression was ferocious. It was as if he was fighting with an invisible force. The veins on his neck were bulging, and even his temples were bulging. Despite his ferocious expression, he could not move. His anger and unwillingness were on the verge of erupting. Ah! The young city lord of the city of 10,000 swords, Guiyang, let out another earth-shattering scream. Everyone shuddered. How much pain could he let out such a scream? It made everyone's hair stand on end and chills ran down their spines. Ah! Guiyang let out another earth-shattering scream. Quick, quick, quick! Another two middle-aged men reached out and pressed their palms on the chopstick. Bang! Bang! They flew straight out, following in the footsteps of the previous middle-aged man. They hung on the vermilion pillar, unable to move. No matter how hard they struggled, it was useless. Ah! Guiyang screamed again. In just a short while, he was already drenched in sweat, and his face was pale. He had never experienced such pain and torture since he was young. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He even had the thought of killing himself. The other three young men did not dare to act recklessly. "Who are you, master? Please forgive us if we have offended you in any way." A middle-aged man closed fist saluted and said in a deep voice, "Young people are insensible. Please forgive us for the sake of the city of 10,000 swords, Flowing Flower Lodge, Cliff of Forgetfulness, and Yellow Leaf Valley." Guiyang and the other three young men looked angry, but they quickly hid it and lowered their heads, as if they were sincerely apologizing. Chu Li shook his head. It was not easy for these people to admit defeat in time. It was obvious that these four sects were not small forces, and they were big forces in the 9th heaven level. It was too embarrassing for them to lower their heads and beg for mercy. It was easy to say, but it was against their nature. It was too difficult to do. The surroundings were quiet, and no one answered. Guiyang and the other three were still enduring the intense pain, and their faces were getting uglier. A gray-robed elder suddenly leaped onto the beam, looked down at the crowd, and then floated down, pointing at Chu Li. It was obvious if there were chopsticks on the table. Among the 10 tables, only Chu Li was empty-handed. There were no chopsticks in his hands, so it was obviously his doing. Another 8 middle-aged men moved and surrounded Chu Li in an instant, glaring at him. Chu Li put down the flagon, glanced at the crowd and said calmly, "These 4 people have no morals with their words, so I will punish them lightly." "Who are you?" the elder who leaped up earlier shouted. Chu Li said, "Chu Li. Which sect?" The gray-robed elder frowned, as if he had heard of this name before. "Just someone from the lower realm." Chu Li glanced at the 4 young men who were in agony and shook his head. "People from the lower realm deserve to die. They deserve to be killed by Asuras. Anyone from the lower realm who ascends to the outland deserves to die." "These are the words of the 4 young masters, right?" "We were just joking." Guiyang gritted his teeth. "Why do you take it so seriously?" "I thought it was noisy, so I asked you to shut up." Chu Li waved his hand. "Hurry up and get lost, don't ruin my drinking mood." "You're the Chu Li who killed Grand Azura?" the gray-robed elder asked. Chu Li nodded. The gray-robed elder said, "Killing Grand Azura isn't much, it's not invincible. Aren't you afraid of provoking someone you can't afford to provoke?" Chu Li laughed. "If that's the case, I can't afford to provoke the 4 sects?" "That's right," the gray-robed elder said. "This time, you've offended someone you shouldn't have. If we let you go, you can still live. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape even if you're a supreme celestial being." Chu Li laughed. "Then I'll have to try." The gray-robed elder suddenly appeared beside the four young men, and slammed his palm on the table. Bang! With a muffled sound, the table that was harder than iron and stone suddenly softened, and then fell like sand. Ah! 4 deafening screams sounded almost at the same time. Chapter 1970. Ah! Another earth-shattering scream was heard. The elder frowned, his hand stopped in midair, unable to touch the chopsticks. In order to prevent such an embarrassing scream, he had sealed the young master's acupuncture point. How could he still scream like this? Elder Chi, don't move, don't move. Guiyang screamed and tried to stop him. It hurts. Young master, just bear with it. It's better to get the pain over with. The elder said, you must pull it out or else it will always hurt. No, no. Guiyang shook his head, it's too painful. If I really pull it out, it will hurt to death. Let Chuli come and remove it. Chuli smiled at them as if he was looking at fools. Guiyang said, Chuli, if you help us remove it, we can let bygones be bygones. If not, there will be no place for you to hide in the 9 heavens. You will be hunted down. Chuli smiled and said, in that case, I'd like to learn a thing or two from the city of 10,000 swords. Let's see just how powerful the city of 10,000 swords is. This chopstick is imbued with my palm force, so be careful. You only have 3 chances. If you can't pull it out after 3 tries, then the last chance will directly attack your heart meridian. Chuli, it was just a joke. Why do you have to be so heavy-handed? Isn't this too vicious? The gray-clothed old man said in a deep voice. Chuli said, they can only blame their bad luck for saying such things in front of me. Chuli, do you really want to offend the 4 sects? The elder said slowly, you have to know that if you offend the 4 sects there will be no place for you in the world, even if you can kill Grand Azura. Chuli said, if I were you, I wouldn't seal your acupuncture point. With the palm force on the chopsticks, you won't be able to seal your acupuncture point. You should just give up. However, I'm not that vicious. After 3 days, the palm force on the chopsticks will dissipate. Their faces were gloomy. After 3 days, the chopsticks would be in the flesh. If they were to pull it out again, it would not feel good. Chuli was deliberately making them suffer. Chuli said, if you don't want to die, then pull it out after 3 days. If you are not convinced, then pull it out now. But don't blame me if you really die. Chuli, speak. What are your conditions? The gray-robed elder asked in a deep voice. What conditions can relieve the young lord of his pain? As for the conditions, Chuli chuckled. If it's the city of 10,000 swords, there should be quite a number of treasure swords, right? Why don't you give me a sword that I'm satisfied with? Then I'll remove the palm energy from the chopstick. As he spoke, he casually unsheathed his sword. The heaven-killing sword was unsheathed. The heaven-regaining sword was simple and unadorned, it did not even look like a normal azure-edge sword. However, as a citizen of the city of 10,000 swords, how could he not recognize swords? As soon as they saw the sky-killing sword, their expressions changed, especially the gray-robed elder. His brows furrowed as he stared at the sky-killing sword, then looked at Chuli and said in a low voice, Sky-killing sword? Chuli raised his eyebrows in surprise. The gray-robed old man sneered and said in a deep voice, what a coincidence. The heaven-slaughtering sword was originally one of our 10,000 swords, city's 9 swords. It fell into the lower realms. I didn't expect you to obtain it. Chuli could not help but laugh. All the treasure swords in the world were left behind by the city of 10,000 swords? Chuli, you also know the heaven-slaughtering sword technique, right? That's why you were able to kill the Great Azura, isn't it? Chuli said, the heaven-slaughtering sword technique did help me kill the Great Azura. Then you don't have many years left to live. The gray-robed old man looked at Chuli sympathetically and shook his head. The heaven-slaughtering technique's power is great, but do you know the price of the heaven-slaughtering technique? Chuli smiled. It's just a few years of my lifespan. It seems like you felt it. What a pity, what a pity. The gray-robed old man shook his head. Those who cultivate the heaven-slaughtering technique do not live long and die young. You're considered a genius to be able to cultivate the heaven-slaughtering technique. This heaven-slaughtering sword is an unlucky sword. I advise you to return it to its owner or else your life will be in danger. Chu Li could not help but laugh. If that's the case, not only do you not want to take out the treasure sword, but you also want to swallow my treasure sword? The gray-clothed elder said in a deep voice. The heaven-slaughtering sword originally belonged to this despicable sect. It was lost outside, and now that it has returned to its rightful owner, we can also give you another treasured sword as compensation, and some spirit pills. Chu Li waved his hand. I'm not exchanging. The gray-robed old man frowned and stared at the heaven-slaughtering sword, then looked at Chu Li. I advise you to think about it, lest you regret it. Chu Li said, either you bring the treasure sword over, or I'll leave now. 3 days later, you can pick up the chopsticks. Actually, 3 days will pass in the blink of an eye, it's not a big deal. You can't leave, the gray-robed old man said. The key now was not the young lord's injury, but the heaven-slaughtering sword. The heaven-slaughtering sword was one of the 9 swords of the city of 10,000 swords. It had been lost outside for a long time. Now that he had finally found it, if he could find it, it would be a great achievement. Chu Li smiled and filled his cup with wine again, then drank it in one gulp. He put down the cup and stood up. I'd like to see how you're going to stop me. Take him down, the city of 10,000 swords will reward you handsomely, the gray-robed old man said. The 8 middle-aged men all swung their palms at Chu Li. They all understood what the gray-robed old man meant. They only wanted the sword and not the person, so they decided to kill him. As for their young lord's injury, as long as he pulled out the chopsticks after 3 days, it was not a big deal. Chu Li pressed on the heaven-slaughtering sword and activated the heaven-slaughtering technique. Suddenly, time seemed to slow down. Everyone felt a strange force binding their bodies, making it hard for them to move. They could only watch as Chu Li waved the long sword and slashed the 8 middle-aged men's right arms one by one. Wherever the long sword passed, the right arms were separated from the body. After a muffled groan, the 8 arms fell to the floor, blood gushing out like a fountain. They all pressed on their acupuncture points to stop the bleeding and looked at Chu Li angrily. Chu Li's Heaven Killer sword had already returned to its scabbard. He held the hilt and looked at the gray-robed old man with a faint smile. These 8 middle-aged men were all rank 1 celestials, but they had no power to resist. Although the power of the Heaven Killer scripture was amazing, Chu Li also found that the power of his Heaven Killer scripture had almost doubled, obviously benefiting from the increase of his cultivation. These 4 young men were of high status, and their guards were all rank 1 celestials. It was indeed extravagant. It seemed that he had caused quite a bit of trouble. However, he was not afraid or regretful at all. Instead, he was eager and very excited. The gray-robed old man saw the power of the Heaven Killer sword displayed by Chu Li, and his eyes became brighter. He stared at the Heaven Killer sword. As expected of one of the 9 swords, its power was so great and unpredictable. He must obtain it. Chu Li said lightly, "It seems that you want to kill me and take the sword. Hand over the Heaven Killer sword, and not only will we not kill you, but we will also give you a treasure sword and a spirit pill. You are a distinguished guest of the city of 10,000 swords." The gray-robed old man said in a deep voice, "If you are blindly greedy and occupy something that does not belong to you, then don't blame the city of 10,000 swords for being heartless." Chu Li said, "Then give it a try. The next time, it will be the head." The gray-robed old man glanced at the other 7 middle-aged men in front of Guiyang and the others, revealing a probing look. Their expressions were solemn, but they had no intention of making a move. First, Chu Li's sword had shocked them. Second, they were responsible for protecting the young lord. Compared to the treasure sword, the young lord's safety was more important. Kill him, Guiyang said in a deep voice. Kill him, and each of you will get a rank 1 treasure sword. Chapter 1971. The City of 10,000 Swords was the authority of swords. Swords were categorized into 9 ranks, similar to the ranks of the Deva. First-rank swords were the most powerful swords other than the 9 great treasured swords. Not only were they able to cut through metal like mud, but each sword had its own spirituality. If it was matched with the inner energy of the sword owner, it would be incredibly powerful. First-rank swords rarely left the City of 10,000 Swords. Only swords that were second rank and below could leave the city. If they could get their hands on a first-rank sword, their strength would increase tremendously. Chu Li squinted at Guiyang and shook his head. You're vicious. I can't let you live. He then struck with his palm. Bang! A middle-aged man pushed Guiyang, but he could not avoid it. Like a stone shot from a catapult, he flew straight into the wall and was imprinted on the wall. Pfft! The middle-aged man spat out a mouthful of blood. He was limp and could not move. His face was golden as he passed out. Uncle Zhao! Guiyang yelled. Chu Li struck at Guiyang once again. Bang! 2 middle-aged men stood in front of him and pushed with their palms. Guiyang flew backward and crashed into the wall. They were like a mantis trying to stop a chariot in front of Chu Li's palm energy. The elder in gray looked gloomy. The other 4 middle-aged men's eyelids twitched. They did not expect Chu Li to be so overbearing. Chu Li chuckled and struck at Guiyang again. In the end, the gray-robed old man could no longer ignore it. His figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, he grabbed Guiyang and flew out of the window like a wisp of smoke. He flew diagonally as if he was flying in the air and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chu Li did not chase after them. He only looked at the remaining 3 young men with a faint smile. The 4 middle-aged men stood in front of them, their bodies tense. If Chu Li really wanted to kill them, they would not be able to keep their lives. Chu Li was more powerful than the rumors said. Chu Li sighed. I'm not a homicidal maniac. I don't have that much of a murderous nature. You may leave. Don't remove the chopsticks again in 3 days. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences. Alright, goodbye. The 4 middle-aged men sighed in relief. The men who lost their right arms had already picked them up and reattached them to their original wounds. They consumed spirit pills and channeled their energy. They needed to rest for a while to recover so it would not affect the use of their right arms. Chu Li waved his hand and sat down again. The young masters of Flowing Flower Little Building, Wangqing Cliff, and Yellow Leaf Valley all walked out with gloomy expressions. They were of high status, so no matter where they went, they would be treated with respect. They would even give them some leeway out of respect for the forces behind them. This was the first time they had been taught such a harsh lesson, so they felt deeply ashamed and wanted nothing more than to hack Chu Li into 1,000 pieces. However, they also knew that Chu Li's martial arts was too strong. It would be too costly to deal with him, so it would be best for someone else to deal with him instead of themselves. Everyone walked out. Just as they were about to reach the staircase, the young master of the Cliff of Forgetfulness, Lu Jing, suddenly stopped. He was of medium build, and his round face looked a little joyful. His small eyes were bright, and he exuded a sharp aura. Chu Li, you have to be careful of the City of 10,000 Swords, Lu Jing said. Chu Li looked up at him. Lu Jing said, the City of 10,000 Swords will definitely not let you off. Chu Li asked, do you have any ideas? No. Lu Jing shook his head and said, you will definitely die. Even if you hand over the Heaven Slaughtering Sword, the City of 10,000 Swords will definitely kill you, because the Heaven Slaughtering Sword can only have one master. Chu Li nodded. Thank you for the reminder. Lu Jing said, if I were you, I would run far away. It would be best to go to the border. Only the City of 10,000 Swords can't touch that place. You won't be able to escape from the city of 10,000 swords pursuit anywhere else. They have sword formations, so it's useless no matter how strong your martial arts are. Chu Li smiled and said, So they are invincible in the world? They are not invincible, but they are enough to deal with you. Lu Jing said, Moreover, the power of your heaven-slaughtering sword is astonishing, but they have a way to restrain it. So the heaven-slaughtering sword is not something you can rely on. You have to be careful about this. Chu Li said, Thank you. He knew Lu Zheng's intentions. In Lu Zheng's eyes, he would definitely die. There was no way he could escape with his life from the city of 10,000 swords pursuit. And if he escaped to the border and ran into the extraterrestrial demons and Asuras, he would definitely die. Lu Zheng reminded him like this because he wanted to waste more of the city of 10,000 swords vitality. His intentions could be said to be sinister. These sects that seemed to be allies were also plotting against each other and scheming against each other. Lu Jing closed fist saluted and slowly walked down the stairs. Chu Li smiled as he watched them leave, then lowered his head to size up the heaven-slaughtering sword. As long as this heaven-slaughtering sword was there, the people of the city of 10,000 swords would be able to sense his location. Through the omniscient mirror, he saw the minds of the gray-robed elder and Guoyang. The heaven-slaughtering sword was indeed one of the 9 swords of the city of 10,000 swords. They had to obtain it. The power of the 9 swords as one was unstoppable. With the heaven-slaughtering sword, the city of 10,000 swords would be able to step into the ranks of the top sects in one fell swoop. They would be able to look down on sects other than the 9 divisions. So the following days would not be peaceful for him. After eating, he began to hurry in the direction of the Hall of the Rain Master. After obtaining the location of the Hall of the Rain Master from the booklet, he only needed to walk forward in a straight line. He wanted to reach the Hall of the Rain Master as soon as possible and meet the main figures of the Hall of the Rain Master. From there, he could use the Heavenly Star Insight technique to predict and find a way to conquer them. Everyone had a weakness. Even the superior celestial beings were no exception. As long as he could find their weakness, he could enter the Hall of the Rain Master. He used his light body technique and his speed was extremely fast. However, in the evening, he stopped beside a stone forest and saw 6 gray-robed elders blocking his way. They all carried long swords and looked at him coldly. The leading elder was the one he had seen in the restaurant. Beside him were 5 gray-robed elders. Their temperament and cultivation level were the same as his. It was obvious that they cultivated the same heart technique and had similar cultivation levels. They were all disciples of the city of 10,000 swords and were all rank 1 celestial beings. Chu Li looked at them calmly and said, You've finally caught up. You can't escape. Chu Li hand over the heaven-slaughtering sword. The gray-robed elder, Hu Zonghua, said slowly. The other 5 gray-robed elders moved and surrounded Chu Li. Chu Li's expression did not change. He said calmly, If you want the heaven-slaughtering sword, it depends on your ability. Then there's nothing more to say. Hu Zonghua shook his head. Set up the formation. The 5 elders floated down. Suddenly, a dazzling light descended from the sky. It divided into 6 rays and shot toward Hu Zonghua and the others. Hu Zonghua and the others all pulled out their swords. Their expressions were solemn. The 6 rays of light landed on their swords. Suddenly, the hazy sword light flashed. The 6 swords stabbed toward the sky. The hazy sword light shot out again and gathered in the air to form a hazy light. Hum! A strange trembling sound was heard. The hazy light instantly fell and enveloped Chu Li. Chu Li's figure disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared a mile away and stepped into the void. Hum! The strange trembling sound was heard again. He looked up. The hazy light was still flashing above his head. It was 100 meters away. Chu Li frowned. The void suddenly shook. The 6 swords broke through the air at the same time and stabbed toward his body. The swords were coming from all directions. It was as if they had formed a cage. There was no way to escape. Chapter 1972. Swoosh! The tip of the sword came into contact with his protective vital energy but continued to advance. Chu Li's figure flashed and disappeared again. He suddenly felt the danger and retreated in time. Buzz! A hazy light appeared above his head again and followed him like a shadow. Chu Li looked up at him. He knew that with it they could follow him closely. He could not get rid of them. The key was to destroy this force. He struck several times with his palms. Bam, 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 bam. A few golden lights descended from the sky and turned into golden palms that collided with the hazy light. The hazy light swayed like the moon swaying in the lake. However, it was not destroyed by the supreme Vajra palm. It was extremely flexible and could neutralize the palm energy of the supreme Vajra palm. It was quite strange. He kept using the heavenly star insight technique. Suddenly, a dagger-like god-punishing thunder sword appeared in the void of his mind. A blue light flashed in his eyes and the god-punishing thunder sword stabbed out. Bam! There was a muffled sound and the hazy light scattered. 6 swords appeared in front of him, but he disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he reappeared at his original position and continued to move west. He knew that he had escaped from the 6 people's senses. As he moved, Chu Li thought of a way to isolate the senses. A huge stone tower gradually appeared above his body. It was faintly discernible and seemed illusory at the same time. After this stone tower appeared, the vague feeling in Chu Li's heart disappeared. He knew that he had completely isolated the heaven-killing sword's senses. That strange force could no longer sense the heaven-killing sword. The power in the wheel pagoda was indeed strange and unpredictable. It could isolate the senses. As he was overjoyed, he continued to operate the chakra pagoda to protect himself. Then, he changed his direction to the south. In the following days, he was not pursued by the city of 10,000 swords. He was curious about the sword formation of Hu Zonghua and the others and began to analyze it in his mind. Unfortunately, he did not learn much and did not truly understand the sword formation's power. 3 days later, he appeared outside a towering city. This city was called the Rain Master City. This city was twice the size of the Spirit Light City that he had seen before, and it was even more prosperous. He stood outside the city and used the omniscient mirror to observe the situation. He could see that the city was bustling with activity. Even the commoners were dressed in luxurious clothes and walked leisurely. The Hall of the Rain Master was located right in the center of the Rain Master City. Above it was a pillar that towered into the clouds. It was impossible to see the end of this stone pillar that was carved with strange patterns and was as thick as 3 people hugging each other. It was as if by climbing up this stone pillar, one would be able to climb to the heavens. Chu Li squinted his eyes and took a look at the stone pillar. He felt a strange energy that contained a strong sense of danger. It was as if he would be killed if he went near it. He could not help but want to escape. This made Chu Li even more determined to enter the palace of the Rain Masters. It seemed that the palace of the Rain Masters really had a strong power. Just like the Thunder Pool, if he wanted to defeat Song Wuji, not only did he have to rely on martial arts, he also had to rely on this kind of power. He heaved a sigh of relief. He had finally arrived. The next step was to take a look at the people in the Rain Master Palace and deduce their fates and weaknesses. Then, he would find a suitable time to meet them and find a chance to enter the Rain Master Palace. The faintly discernible chakra pagoda outside his body retracted back into his body. Along the way, he tried to completely retract the chakra pagoda's shadow into his body so that others wouldn't notice anything strange. It was a pity that the Chakravarti pagoda was already very pure, almost to the point where it couldn't be any purer. After 3 days of effort, the effects were minimal. If he wanted to circulate it, it would appear outside his body. If he didn't circulate it, it would completely return to his body. The Hall Master of the White Dew Hall of the Rain Master Hall, Song Qingji, was leaving the southern gate of the Rain Master City with 2 guards, heading towards the White Dew City. The Hall of the Rain Master had 4 halls: White Dew Hall, Spring Rain Hall, Summer Rain Hall, and Autumn Frost Hall. Each hall had 2,000 disciples, all of whom were second rank and above. As the Hall Master of the White Dew Hall, it could be said that he held great power. At this moment, his brows were tightly furrowed and his face was full of worry. His figure was slender and his face was full of bumps and hollows. His face was full of vicissitudes, but his eyes were abnormally bright. His feet fluttered as if he was riding the wind. His speed was extremely fast, but he was absent-mindedly thinking about other things. The 2 middle-aged men following behind him were both first rank. Their eyes were drowsy as if they hadn't woken up yet, but in fact, they were in the most relaxed and most sensitive state. Once there was the slightest movement, they would wake up. "Hall Master!" A guard hurriedly stretched out his hand to stop him and shouted in a low voice. Song Qingji's eyes lit up and he stopped in his tracks. His ears twitched and his eyes swept across the surroundings. He nodded slowly. He faintly heard a muffled sound coming from afar. This kind of muffled sound couldn't be heard by ordinary people, but as a top-notch expert, he could tell with one ear that it was a fight between experts. Moreover, their cultivation was profound and probably not inferior to a first-rank celestial. "Hall Master, we should hide for a while," one of the guards said in a low voice. The other also nodded, his face full of agreement. From the sound, it was obvious that the 2 parties fighting had profound cultivation and shouldn't get involved. The best strategy was to stay far away. The less trouble, the better. Song Qingji waved his hand. "Let's go take a look." As the Hall Master of the White Dew Hall and the Hall Master of the Rain Master Palace, he was confident and fearless. "Hall Master!" The 2 guards shook their heads helplessly. "Why bother?" As they spoke, they followed Song Qingji and rushed forward. They stuck close to the treetops and went deep into the forest. They lay on the treetops and looked at the empty space in the depths of the forest. More than 20 towering trees had fallen to the ground, forming an empty space. In the empty space, 6 people were surrounding one person and attacking wildly. The sword light formed a clear pond, immersing the valiant young man in the center. The 6 middle-aged men swung their swords lightly and elegantly, without a trace of mortal aura or murderous aura. The valiant young man in the center had a pale face. There was blood at the corner of his mouth and his chest was bleeding. It was obvious that he had been stabbed. "Hall Master, it's the city of 10,000 swords," a guard said in a low voice, almost whispering. Song Qingji nodded slowly. He could also see it. The people from the city of 10,000 swords were easy to recognize. They had a small sword in their sleeves, and only the city of 10,000 swords could use such an exquisite and powerful sword formation. It was a pity for the young man in the center. Anyone who went against the city of 10,000 swords would not end well. Another guard said in a low voice, "Should we make a move?" He knew that the White Dew Hall and the city of 10,000 swords did not get along. If there was a chance, they would not let it go. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." It would be a good thing to save this young man. Song Qingji shook his head. "Let's wait and see. Chuli, hand over the sword and we'll spare your life." A cold shout came from a middle-aged man. It was Hu Zonghua. Chuli covered his chest with one hand and slapped with the other. Bang bang! Rays of light descended from the sky and fell on the heads of the 6 people. The 2 golden palms collided with the invisible sword energy and were shattered into specks of golden light. "You can't escape." Hu Zonghua shook his head. "No one will save you if you drag this on. You have no friends in the outland. The goddess attraction mountain has long been destroyed." Chu Li scoffed. "If it weren't for your sneak attack, killing you would be a piece of cake." Hu Zonghua chuckled. It's a pity that you're using the sky regicide sword. Otherwise, you could have killed us. Chapter 1973. Hu Zonghua used this to his advantage. While Chu Li was using Sky Killing Sword, he suddenly attacked and gave Chu Li a blow. The Monarch Descends Sword's wound wasn't that easy to endure. The Monarch Descends Sword's strange sword energy would continue to destroy the body of the victim, continuously expanding the injury until death. Unless someone could use pure inner energy to dissolve the sword energy, they would definitely die. The Monarch Descends Sword's sword energy was unimaginable. There were only a few people in the world who could solve it, and they were all important people. Chu Li couldn't meet these important people, so he would definitely die. Knowing that Chu Li would definitely die, they didn't dare to be careless. They kept using the sword formation to delay him so he couldn't escape and didn't have time to heal. Chu Li was Chu Li after all. What if he had other ways to heal? As time passed, Chu Li's injuries became more and more serious. They became more and more relieved. Even when they chased him out of Rain Master City, they didn't retreat. They brought the Monarch Descends Sword out. They had to get back Sky Killing Sword or else they wouldn't be able to report back. Chu Li sneered. I won't die so easily. I've seen more dangerous situations than this. Even if I really die, I'll destroy Sky Killing Sword first. I won't let your city of 10,000 swords get it. Sky Killing Sword isn't that easy to destroy. Hu Zonghua said coldly. He felt a chill in his heart. He really had to guard against Chu Li's actions. However, Sky Killing Sword was extremely hard. It couldn't be destroyed so easily unless the other 8 swords of the 9 swords were wielded. Chu Li said lightly, if there's a great Azura now, it's enough to destroy Sky Killing Sword. You. Hu Zonghua's expression changed slightly. He knew the story of Sky Killing Sword. The reason why it was lost was because of Azura. Back then, it was taken by Azura during the battle with Azura. It was lost and he never thought he would find it because Azura Realm and Outland weren't connected. It couldn't run into Azura Realm. He never thought it would end up in the lower realm and be brought back by Chu Li. This was Heaven's will for Sky Killing Sword to return to the city of 10,000 swords and gather the 9 swords to revive the glory of the city of 10,000 swords. Chu Li said, although the regal Sky Sword is sturdy, it's afraid of the Azura's self-destruction. Back then, it was almost destroyed by the Azura's self-destruction, so if it self-destructs again, it won't survive. Chu Li, you're courting death. Hu Zonghua said coldly. Chu Li chuckled. If I'm going to die, I'll drag you guys down with me. Alright, I'll fulfill your wish. Hu Zonghua sneered. The 6 people's sword techniques suddenly lit up, forming an even more powerful sword aura, trying to mince Chu Li into pieces. One of the guards said in a low voice, Hall Master, what are you waiting for? Chu Li. Song Qingji said thoughtfully, I think I've heard this name before. The Chu Li who killed a great Azura and cultivated to become an enlightened master? Yes, it's him. Song Qingji nodded, then shook his head and sighed. It's a pity that he's from the lower realm. Hall Master, regardless of whether he is a heavenly deity from the lower realms or not, it is true that he is going against the city of 10,000 swords. Are we really going to watch with folded arms? A guard hurriedly asked. He could see that Chu Li was an arrow at the end of its flight and could not hold on any longer. Song Qingji said, This Chu Li is a powerful person, but he was forced to this step. It seems that the city of 10,000 swords is getting stronger. Yes, yes, a guard said in a low voice. All these years, they have been immersed in cultivation and ignored the outside world. I heard that their strength has increased greatly. It seems that we can't be careless now, we have to suppress them. Song Qingji nodded and shouted, Stop! It was like a thunderbolt in the clear sky. The 7 people who were fighting ignored him. The six-man sword array was still spinning at high speed, trying to mince Chu Li. Chu Li covered his chest with one hand and struck out with the other. Golden light flashed and turned into a golden palm, resisting the sword aura. Humph! Song Qingji scoffed. He and two other guards instantly appeared above the seven people, then punched out. The two guards followed up with punches, their fist energy merging with Song Qingji's fist energy, the sky like a mountain pressing down. Bang! The sword array suddenly paused. Chu Li took advantage of this pause and instantly disappeared, appearing 100 meters away in the next moment. Song Qingji scoffed. The Rain Master City is not your city of 10,000 swords, don't be presumptuous. Hall Leader Song. Hu Zhonghua's expression changed slightly. Song Qingji floated down and slowly landed on the ground. The two big guards followed closely behind, staring at Hu Zhonghua and the others. Hu Zhonghua fist saluted and scoffed, Hall Leader Song, this is the private matter of the city of 10,000 swords. I hope Hall Leader Song will not interfere, lest the two sects start a war. Song Qingji scoffed. The city of 10,000 swords is nothing, they dare to fight with us? You think too highly of yourself. Hu Zhonghua's expression was cold, his gaze calm. This Chu Li is an enlightened master from the lower realm. He is not on the same side as us. Hall Leader Song wants to fight with our city because of this person? I just can't stand to bully the weak. What kind of ability is that? Song Qingji curled his lips and waved his hand. Don't gather? Spit? Huang banging on the kitchen chimes to vent his anger? What a joke. Bao Zhonghua. If it was any other time, Hu Zhonghua would have retreated to prevent Song Qingji from taking the opportunity to cause trouble. The city of 10,000 swords and the White Dew Hall were enemies. But when it came to Heaven Killing Sword, he could not retreat. If Heaven Killing Sword really fell into the hands of the White Dew Hall, it would be difficult for the city of 10,000 swords to get it again. He turned to look at the other 5 people. They nodded slightly, they understood what he meant. Chu Li said, Hall Leader Song, be careful, they want to die together. Hu Zhonghua, if you die, what will happen to the sovereign descending sword? Song Qingji's eyes suddenly lit up. Hu Zhonghua cursed in his heart. What a despicable Chu Li. He wanted to use Song Qingji to deal with them. They only thought about not letting Heaven Killing Sword fall into Song Qingji's hands. They forgot that they still had the sovereign descending sword. If they could not get Heaven Killing Sword and the sovereign descending sword, it would be impossible to revive the city of 10,000 swords with only 2 swords. Chu Li raised his voice, Hall Leader Song, they have the sovereign descending sword, I have the Heaven Killing Sword, that's why I was restrained by them and was injured. Otherwise, with the 6 of them and the sword formation, it would not be worth mentioning. Song Qingji chuckled, how arrogant of you. He turned to look at Hu Zhonghua. Hand over the sovereign descending sword and I will spare your lives, or else you will die here. If I call, you should know how many people will come. Hu Zhonghua showed a look of despair. This was the Rain Master Palace, even if it was not the White Dew clan. If Song Qingji called, the front guard of the Rain Master Palace would definitely move. By then, the 6 of them would be captured without a doubt. There was no chance of survival. There was only one way out, escape. Chu Li raised his voice, they want to escape. It's not that easy to escape. Song Qingji shook his head and laughed. He tossed it into the sky, instantly the sky brightened up, then spread out to form gray clouds. Under the cover of the dark clouds, the void seemed to be locked. They could only use light body technique. They could not use void diversion. Hu Zhonghua gritted his teeth. Hall Leader Song, even if we destroy the sword, we will not hand it over. Then destroy it. Song Qingji crossed his arms and smiled. I want to see how you are going to destroy it. If we destroy the sovereign descending sword, the city of 10,000 swords will fight to the death with the White Dew clan. Hu Zhonghua said slowly. Song Qingji shook his head. Do you really think we are afraid of the city of 10,000 swords? Quickly, hand over the sovereign descending sword. Chapter 1974. As he spoke, he was already close to Hu Zonghua. Hu Zonghua slowly pulled out a long sword from his waist with a calm gaze. It was broad and plain, the blade was dull and without the domineering aura of the monarch descends sword. It was so simple and unadorned. If one didn't know about it, they wouldn't think it was a treasure sword. Song Qingji, however, had some misgivings. He could see Hu Zonghua's determination, and he felt a headache coming on. The people of the city of 10,000 swords understood swords too well, and they also had many unimaginable abilities. If Hu Zonghua could really destroy the monarch descends, then it would really be a disaster for him. Not only would he not get the monarch descends sword, he would also provoke the city of 1,000 swords into a life and death struggle. The other two protectors wanted to sneak closer but couldn't. Hu Zonghua wasn't alone. The other 5 had already surrounded him. If he really wanted to make a move, he would have to defeat them first, and that would be enough time to destroy the monarch descends sword. The scene was at a standstill. Song Qingji racked his brains but couldn't think of a solution. Chu Li held his chest and shouted in the air, "Watch my sword!" He pulled out the heaven-killing sword from his waist and threw it at Hu Zonghua. It turned into a black light and shot into a tree at the side. Bang! The thick ancient tree exploded into pieces. The heaven-killing sword fell to the ground and was almost turned into a pile of white powder. The sword was only 20 meters away from Hu Zonghua. He immediately stepped to the side of the heaven-killing sword and reached out to pick it up. The heaven-killing sword that he had been chasing so hard had appeared in front of him. How could he resist? As long as he got the heaven-killing sword, he could use the secret skill to escape. Song Qingji and the others were powerful, but there were only 3 of them. They couldn't catch up. As long as he could send the heaven-killing sword back to the city of 1,000 swords, it would be a great achievement. Courting death! Song Qingji roared. He didn't even have time to glare at Chu Li. He slapped at Hu Zonghua, but it was too late. Hu Zonghua had already picked up the heaven-killing sword and revealed an ecstatic expression. The other 5 surrounded Hu Zonghua and stopped Song Qingji's palm energy and the other 2 protectors. Bang, 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 bang! Muffled sounds rang out incessantly like muffled thunder, causing one's blood to surge. Chu Li lightly struck out with his palm. A beam of golden light descended from the sky and landed directly on top of Hu Zonghua's head, transforming into a golden palm that slammed down. Bang! Hu Zonghua fell straight down, his head smashed like a watermelon, red and white matter bursting out. "Alright." Song Qingji was overjoyed as he turned into a wisp of smoke and instantly appeared beside Hu Zonghua. He grabbed the monarch descends sword and was about to take over the heaven slaughtering sword. Chu Li said, "Be careful." Song Qingji was not stupid either. He knew that Hu Zonghua was knocked down straight and did not make any movement to dodge. He must have been plotted against by Chu Li, and the source of the plotting came from that regicide sword. He retracted his hand and only held the monarch descends sword in his hand. Then, he laughed out loud, "The monarch descends sword is here. Hurry up and scram, or I'll kill you all." The 5 middle-aged men retreated and glared at Song Qingji before glaring at Chu Li. Chu Li clutched his chest. His face was pale as he smiled at them. "If you're not convinced, you can continue to hunt me down. I won't fall for your tricks next time. I'll kill whoever comes my way. Chu Li, you will die without a doubt. If you kill someone from our city of 10,000 swords, no one will be able to live," a middle-aged man said coldly. Chu Li smiled and walked forward slowly. However, the middle-aged man did not look at him. Instead, he looked at Song Qingji. "Clan leader Song, we'll definitely take back the monarch descends sword. You've gotten yourself into big trouble. You'll bring disaster to the White Dew clan." "Haha, I'll have to see that." Song Qingji laughed and waved the monarch descends sword. Hurry up and scram. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. As he spoke, he lifted Hu Zhonghua's corpse with the tip of his foot. The 5 men took Hu Zhonghua's corpse and left. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. Chu Li walked slowly toward Song Qingji. He bent down to pick up the regicide sword and sheathed it. Then, he gave a fist salute. Thank you, clan leader Song. I can't repay you for saving my life. I can only thank you. You're Chu Li. Song Qingji smiled and sized him up. His gaze was like cold electricity, as if it could penetrate through his organs. Chu Li from the Ji dynasty? Chu Li smiled. My name is not worth mentioning. I didn't expect clan leader Song to have heard of me. You're quite famous. It's not easy to kill a great Azura. Song Qingji said, How did you get entangled with them? Chu Li shook his head and smiled bitterly. Don't mention it. I exposed the regicide sword and caught the attention of the city of 10,000 swords. They said it was one of their 9 swords and wanted me to return it to its rightful owner. In fact, they wanted to steal my sword. The regicide sword. Song Qingji said, It's indeed one of the 9 swords of the city of 10,000 swords. It's been lost for thousands of years. Now that it suddenly appeared in your hands, of course, they won't let it go. You're getting into trouble because of your wealth. Chu Li took out a pill and swallowed it. He sighed. Even if it's one of their 9 swords, I can't just hand it over. After all, most of my martial arts came from the regicide sword. Regicide sword technique? Song Qingji nodded. No wonder it can kill a great Azura. But this thing consumes a lot of life. Chu Li said, I had a fortuitous encounter. My life is extremely long. I'm not afraid of consumption. Song Qingji smiled. That's a good match for you. With the regicide sword, how could you be hurt by them? Even a sword formation isn't that powerful, right? Chu Li sighed. I didn't expect the sovereign descending sword to be able to restrain the regicide sword. Its power was greatly reduced. I was trapped by their sword formation and couldn't escape. I was stabbed once and only managed to escape after risking my life. If it wasn't for clan leader Song's help, I would have been dead for sure. Song Qingji saw that Chu Li's aura was fluctuating and his body was empty. He did not doubt Chu Li's words. If it wasn't for him, Chu Li would have died even if he could kill 1 or 2 disciples from the city of 10,000 swords. He smiled. How do you plan to repay me for saving your life? Chu Li closed fist saluted. I'm new here. I really don't have much to repay. I can only repay you in the future. Actually, you don't have to wait. You can help now, Song Qingji said. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and revealed a doubtful expression. Song Qingji said, Do you want to join the White Du clan? Chu Li was stunned. He then shook his head. Clan leader Song, please forgive me. I'm a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, and I'm used to being alone. I really can't be restrained. You're alone and even have Goddess Attraction Mountain. There's no way you can escape from the city of 10,000 swords. Song Qingji shook his head. It's not that I want to diminish your prestige. Even if you can kill the great Azura, you're a supreme celestial being. You won't be able to defeat the city of 10,000 swords. There are many old monsters in the city of 10,000 swords. They all have earth-shattering powers. There's still a huge difference between them. Thank you for your kindness, clan leader Song. Chu Li sighed. Song Qingji smiled. You're a smart person. You should understand that there's only one way out now. Join the White Du clan. Under the protection of the White Du clan, the city of 10,000 swords can't do anything to you. He knew of Chu Li's achievements. He was a powerful person. Even if his cultivation level was not good, he had the regicide sword. The regicide sword had astonishing power. If he could join the White Du clan would have a sharp blade. Chapter 1975. Chu Li hesitated and shook his head. The Rain Master Hall doesn't recruit people from the lower realm. How can I enter? The Rain Master Hall doesn't recruit people who have ascended. You're not ascended, so you can enter. Song Qingji smiled. Don't worry. As long as I agree to let you in, you'll be a member of the White Dew clan and also a member of the Rain Master Hall. Others can't say anything and they can't chase you away. Chu Li said, I was once recruited by the Tai Yu Palace. They said that as long as I enter the Tai Yu Palace, my treasured swords, spirit pills, and even the star stones are ordinary items. They're not worth mentioning. Haha, don't listen to the nonsense of the Tai Yu Palace. Song Qingji shook his head. They're really useless. They dare to say anything in order to recruit people. Your Imperial Sky Sword is one of the 9 swords in the city of 10,000 swords. There aren't many treasured swords better than it. As for spirit pills, they have many, but they're all healing items. We don't need them. There's also the Star Stone. It's not an ordinary item. Chu Li said, the Star Stone is not ordinary. The best use of the Star Stone is to conceal the heavenly secrets and calm the mind. It can assist in cultivation. It's a treasure. It's also not a product of the Outland. It's produced by falling meteorites. Song Qingji scoffed. There are many in the Outland, but it's too exaggerated to say that it's ordinary. Don't listen to the nonsense of the Tai Yu Palace. They're trying to trick you into entering. Chu Li nodded. No wonder the Star Stone is so precious. It's not from the Outland. No one knows where it comes from. The current Star Stones are all obtained from falling meteorites. You might encounter one if you're lucky, but it's not just luck. Usually, it's obtained through competition. Song Qingji said, once a meteor streaks across the sky, there will be people tracking it. Moreover, there will be experts who are proficient in the art of divination to deduce its location. From there, they will track where it landed and snatch it back. When it comes to actual snatching, our Hall of Rain Masters is one of the 9 divisions. We have a great advantage. The stronger the sect, the more star stones they have. Chu Li said, luckily I didn't believe it, or I would have really become a member of the Tai Yu Palace. Tai Yu Hall's strength is insignificant. Song Qingji waved his hand and said, unlike our Rain Master Hall, you won't regret joining us. Chu Li hesitated again. His face suddenly turned pale, as if his injuries had worsened. That's settled then. Song Qingji waved his hand and said, let's go, follow me back to the hall to heal. As he spoke, he went forward to help Chu Li up and glided away. Chu Li wanted to struggle, but to no avail. He looked at Song Qingji helplessly. Clan leader Song, this is to repay me for saving your life. Song Qingji said, don't you want to repay me? Chu Li smiled bitterly. There are many ways to repay your kindness. Why do you have to do this? This is the best way. Song Qingji said, I'm lacking experts right now. You came at the right time. Sigh. Chu Li shook his head helplessly. Song Qingji said, you were injured by the Monarch Descend's sword, right? Yes. Chu Li nodded. He felt a strange sword energy flowing in his body, and he couldn't get rid of it. Not only could the heaven-killing sword technique not get rid of it, it strengthened it instead. It was really strange. The Monarch Descend's sword was really strange. Song Qingji's feet were gliding and the scenery in front of Chu Li flew past him. Song Qingji's cultivation level had reached the level of supreme class. He could be considered a top-notch master. Song Qingji spoke as he hurried. You cultivate the heaven-killing sword technique. What you fear the most is the Monarch Descend's sword. If someone else gets hit by the Monarch Descend's sword, they might be injured 30%. You will be injured 60%. Your injuries are very troublesome. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Song Qingji didn't stop walking, and he didn't stop talking. Once the 9 swords of the city of 10,000 swords are gathered, their power will be earth-shattering. The city of 10,000 swords will be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the 9 divisions. It's a pity that we haven't had the heaven-killing sword all these years. These 9 swords are very mysterious. They mutually restrain each other. The monarch descends sword counters the heaven-killing sword. It's not water and fire, it's a mouse and a cat. It can't resist at all. Chu Li frowned. Then how can I heal my injuries? Song Qingji said, we need to find someone to help. When we return to the clan, we need to find a few people to cure your injuries. If you rely on yourself, it will get worse and worse. In the end, you will die from your injuries. Chu Li nodded slowly. His face was solemn. Even if you join the White Dew clan, you need to be careful of the city of 10,000 swords. They won't be satisfied. Song Qingji laughed. This time, you've stepped on their tail. They will fight with their lives. Chu Li said, thank you, clan leader. Haha, it's good that you understand my painstaking efforts. Song Qingji smiled. This is what I think. Instead of dying in the hands of the city of 10,000 swords, I might as well enter the White Dew clan and kill more Azuras. Chu Li said, actually, I can hide in the lower realm. Because even if you return to the lower realm, they will still descend to kill you. Song Qingji said. Chu Li smiled. That's useless. They can't bring back the heaven-killing sword. Celestials could descend to the lower realm, but they could only return through ascension. Their bodies couldn't return and they couldn't bring back the heaven-killing sword. Do you think you're the only one who cultivated to become an enlightened master? Song Qingji laughed and shook his head. There are many who cultivated to become enlightened masters in the city of 10,000 swords. After paying a sufficient price, they can return to the lower realm and bring back the heaven-killing sword. Chu Li frowned and remained silent. The longest lifespan of a celestial was close to 10,000 years. The apotheosis began 1,000 years ago. Logically speaking, there were many who cultivated to become enlightened masters in the Outland. There might even be many of them. But why didn't they return to their original world? There must be a restriction that prevented these enlightened masters from returning. He asked, what's the price? Death. Song Qingji said, enlightened masters are insignificant in front of the power of heaven and earth. Their lifespan exceeds the limit of the lower realm's lifespan. Once they enter the lower realm, their lifespan will be reduced. They can only be freed by giving up their bodies and ascending. They can recover when they return to the Outland. Ordinary celestials must give up their bodies to enter the divine gate. Only by cultivating to become enlightened masters can they enter the divine gate. However, if these enlightened masters from the lower realm don't give up their bodies and return to the Outland, they won't be able to survive. This is the power of heaven and earth. Chu Li frowned. It seemed like Goddess Attraction Mountain was an exception. Goddess Attraction Mountain made an exception because of a mystical item. This mystical item is in the hands of the Golden Dragon. No one can take it away. Song Qingji shook his head. But if you stay in White Dew City, no matter how savage the city of 10,000 swords is, they won't dare to enter White Dew City to assassinate you. Don't worry. Chu Li nodded slowly. He had been pretending to be unwilling, but in fact, he was secretly laughing. At least his plan did not go to waste. It was true that he was being hunted by the city of 10,000 swords, but he had gotten injured on purpose. Moreover, he had calculated Song Qingji's whereabouts and appeared in the forest outside the Rain Master's Hall to fight Hu Zonghua and the others. If Song Qingji was in danger and he stepped in to save him, Song Qingji would definitely be wary of him. Song Qingji would not help him for no reason. He must have a motive. Now that Song Qingji had stepped in to help, he must also have a motive. Song Qingji had lost a lot of manpower and needed to replenish manpower to fight the Azuras in the Outland. Chapter 1976. It seemed like he had taken the right step. He was certain that he could enter the White Dew Hall and enter the Hall of Rain Masters. However, entering the Hall of Rain Masters was only the first difficult step. It would not be so easy to enter the upper echelons of the Hall of Rain Masters because his identity limited his path of advancement. There would always be some people who did not trust him. The older one was, the more conservative and stubborn they would be. This was determined by human nature. It was as difficult to resist as aging and death. The upper echelons of the Hall of Rain Masters were definitely not young and would definitely have concerns about his identity. Song Qingji could let him enter the White Dew Hall so easily because he was young and because of the situation. The White Dew Hall was currently understaffed, but they did not need a rank 2 celestial. They needed a rank 1 or even a supreme rank. Chu Li had killed a great Azura and was equivalent to a supreme celestial. Once he appeared, he would not let him go. Song Qingji's light body technique was extremely high and he was extremely fast. In a short while, he arrived at a huge city. The 10 guards outside the north gate greeted him. Song Qingji waved his hand and went straight in. After entering the city, he bypassed the bustling streets and went straight through the alleys to a mansion in the center of the city. This is where the White Dew Hall is located. Song Qingji came to the door with 2 lifelike stone lions and laughed. This will be your home in the future. Go in and take a look. The 2 protectors in blue closed fist saluted. Song Qingji nodded and then led Chu Li in through the open door. They bypassed a screen to lengthen life and came to a wide martial arts field. There were more than 100 people practicing in the martial arts field. It was very lively. They did not react to Song Qingji's appearance and continued practicing. Chu Li glanced at the 100 people. Most of them were rank 2 and not a single rank 1. Song Qingji led Chu Li around the martial arts field and arrived at the main hall in the north. He had Chu Li sit on an armchair while he sat on the armchair in the north. The ones outside are all rank 2. The rank 1 ones won't train here. Chu Li said, "Are there only 100 rank 2? Of course." Song Qingji nodded. Rank 2 is the lowest threshold, but once they enter the White Dew Hall, entering rank 1 is only a matter of time. These guys are unlucky and did not enter rank 1. Chu Li nodded lightly. He knew that the White Dew Hall was powerful and the Rain Master Hall was even more powerful. He did not expect that only 100 of the 2,000 people were second rank and the rest were first rank. Compared to the White Dew Hall, the Taiyue Hall was indeed not worth mentioning. No wonder the Taiyue Hall wanted to trick him like that. Song Qingji said, "Go and heal your injuries first. I have some spirit pills here. You can try it. If you can't do it yourself, I'll help." Inner force mental cultivation methods were usually very secretive. Unless it was someone from the same sect or someone close to them, they would rarely accept help to circulate their inner force to heal. If they could heal themselves, it would be best to do it themselves. Otherwise, they would feel uncomfortable. He raised his voice and said, "Old Song, bring me my 9-yang pill." "Yes, Hall Master." An old man in the corner of the hall answered and left quietly. He soon returned with a small black box about the size of a jewelry box. The old man carefully presented it with both hands. Song Qingji said, "Give it to Chu Li." The old man's eyebrows were all white and his face was like a baby's. It was obvious that he took good care of himself and lived a long life. He smiled and presented it with both hands. "Young Master Chu, this is the 9-yang pill. It's the best spirit medicine in the hall. Our hall master only has one." Chu Li was stunned. He quickly said, "Hall Master, you can't do that. There's no need to use such a precious medicine. This is a sword wound from the Monarch Descend's sword. It's hard to say whether the 9-yang pellet will be effective. The other spirit medicines are even more difficult." Song Qingji waved his hand and said, "Spirit medicines are used to heal wounds." Sigh. "Yes." Chu Li nodded helplessly. He slowly took it and opened the box. It was a golden pill the size of a longan. It did not have any special fragrance. It looked like a pill made of gold. He crushed the beeswax and threw it into his mouth. Suddenly, A fragrance went straight into his organs and into the sword aura in his chest. Chu Li instantly felt a pure yang energy colliding with the sword aura of the sword of sovereign descent. He began to channel it. The medicinal effect of the 9-yang pill was similar to his supreme diamond scripture. He channeled the scripture and combined his inner energy with the medicinal effect to unleash a great power. TSS. His chest trembled. A sword mark appeared on the wall opposite him. It was a foot deep, and the white jade powder on the wall fell. Chu Li spat out a mouthful of blood and let out a long sigh of relief. What a powerful sword aura of the sword of sovereign descent! Song Qingji exclaimed. He shifted his gaze from the wall to the sword of sovereign descent. He sighed. Unfortunately, we don't have the sword technique of the sword of sovereign descent. We can only use it as a normal sword. Chu Li sighed. What a powerful spirit pill. Thank you, Hall Master. You're now a disciple of our hall. We can't not help you when you're in trouble. How's your injury? Song Qingji waved his hand and smiled. Chu Li replied, the sword aura has been expelled. I'm fine now. I'll be fine after a day of rest. All right. We'll set up an incense tomorrow and officially enter the White Dew Hall. From now on, you're a true disciple of the White Dew Hall. Take care of your injury. Song Qingji smiled. Chu Li fist saluted. Elder Song, bring Chu Li to his courtyard and settle him down. Song Qingji ordered. Yes, Hall Master. Elder Song responded and looked at Chu Li. Chu Li fist saluted and walked out with Elder Song. Elder Song smiled and brought him out of the hall. They turned east and passed through 2 moon doors. They arrived at a small alley and brought him to a small courtyard. Elder Song smiled. Young Master Chu, this is your courtyard. Go in and see if you're satisfied. Chu Li replied, but I have a courtyard to myself. That's right. This is the treatment of a rank 1 master. Elder Song smiled. Chu Li nodded and did not say anything. Elder Song personally opened the door and entered the courtyard. It was a spacious courtyard with a parterre on the east and a bamboo forest on the west. The rustling sound of the bamboo forest could be heard from time to time. The faint fragrance of flowers wafted in the courtyard. In between the bamboo forest and the parterre was a small training field. The weapon rack beside it was filled with weapons. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. Elder Song smiled. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, just tell me. Thank you, Senior Song. Chu Li fist saluted. Elder Song quickly waved his hand. You don't have to be so polite. I'm Song Lin. Just call me Elder Song. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Song Qingji saw 2 elders striding in. He frowned to himself but kept a smile on his face. Elder Zhao, Elder Tang. Hall Master. The 2 elders' fists saluted and sat on 2 armchairs. The round-faced elder said, I heard that the Hall Master has accepted an enlightened master from the lower realm into the hall? You guys sure are well informed. Song Qingji smiled. The round-faced elder said, Hall Master, this news has spread throughout the entire White Dew Hall. How could we not know? Song Qingji said, Yes, I've already invited Chu Li into the White Dew Hall. Hall Master, isn't this against the rules? The thin elder who had been sitting quietly said, The Hall of Rain Masters has its rules. The rules cannot be broken. If that's the case, the 2 deputy hall masters won't let Chu Li into the hall? Song Qingji narrowed his eyes. Chapter 1977. Chu Li's prowess had spread like wildfire at the top of the Grandmaster's boundary. He was another Song Wuji who was even more ferocious than the original Song Wuji. The speed of his advancement and the strength of his martial arts were comparable to those old monsters. To be able to fight against 2 or even a few great Asuras alone was truly shocking. If he was an enlightened master, he would have become a dazzling star that shone through the entire Grandmaster's boundary. He would be sought after by many and become the target of countless forces. However, Chu Li's identity was too awkward as he was the least controlled by the Grandmaster. The Elders Guild was extremely afraid of him, so none of the top forces dared to win him over as they did not want to offend the Elders Guild. There were many enlightened masters in the Grandmaster's boundary, but these enlightened masters had been in the Grandmaster's boundary for more than 1,000 years. After thousands of years, they all belonged to the Grandmaster's boundary and had families and descendants. Each of them had their own forces and were a controllable force. Chu Li, on the other hand, was all alone and uncontrollable. If there was no way to control such a powerful force, once it went out of control and destroyed, there would be disastrous consequences and huge losses. Therefore, they were cautious and did not dare to win him over for fear of causing trouble. I've agreed to let Chu Li enter the White Dew clan. Song Qingji narrowed his eyes and said lightly. The air in the hall suddenly froze and became colder. The round-faced elder said, "Clan leader, please reconsider. Chu Li has no attachments and can run back to the lower realm at any time. What if he has bad intentions towards us and runs back after causing trouble? What can we do?" Chu Li is not such a heartless person. Song Qingji shook his head. From what I know, Chu Li is a person who values relationship. According to the Elders Guild, Chu Li is extremely resentful towards the Celestials and the Grandmaster's boundary. The thin elder said, "It's very likely that he will find a chance to take revenge on the Grandmaster's boundary." This was also why the Elders Guild of the Grandmaster's boundary was wary of Chu Li. They felt that he was a hidden danger and they did not know when he would explode. Song Qingji frowned. "Of course I know. Then how can you win him over, clan leader?" The round-faced elder quickly said, "This is a huge problem. We, the White Dew clan, can't bring trouble upon ourselves. It's a problem, but it's also an opportunity." Song Qingji scoffed. The two old men immediately fell silent. All of them knew the situation the White Dew Hall was in. They were about to head to the Outerium slaughter grounds to fight the Azura, and they'd already lost a great amount of manpower. If this continued, then the entire army would probably be in danger of being annihilated. They were in urgent need of manpower, but everyone knew that the White Dew Hall was a place to die. No one dared to come, so they couldn't recruit anyone. The Rain Master Hall was one of the 9 divisions. It was originally a place where people fought to get in, but now everyone was avoiding it like a snake or a scorpion. Every time they thought of this, their hearts burned with anxiety. However, the two elders believed that no matter how anxious they were, they should not cause chaos because of anxiety. Chu Li was a huge problem. If he suddenly rebelled, it would be even harder for the White Dew Hall to raise their heads under the internal and external troubles. Song Qingji said, "Chu Li might hate the Grandmaster, but he's even more furious at the Azuras. The great Azuras have been hunting him down. Do you think he wouldn't fight to the death if he encountered the Azuras in the foreign battleground?" The two old men pondered. The grudge between Chu Li and the Azuras was not even worth mentioning compared to the Grandmaster. He had already killed too many Azuras, it was practically a death grudge. Perhaps the Azuras' hatred for Chu Li was even greater than the Grandmaster's. Now, the Azuras' top priority was to kill Chu Li, and they kept sending great Azuras. They were already desperate. In order to kill Chu Li, they had already lost dozens of great Azuras. Song Qingji scoffed. "Let's get through this first. If we can't survive the next big battle, who cares if Chu Li will cause trouble?" Sigh. The two old men shook their heads and sighed. Although there were still 2 months before they would go to the foreign battleground, looking at the situation, it was impossible for anyone to come. The next morning, when Chu Li was cultivating, Song Lin came over and prepared to open the hall. When Chu Li and Song Lin arrived at the White Dew Hall, it was filled with people. Almost all of them were rank 1 masters. With a glance, Chu Li saw a total of 1,622 people, a total of 1,000 rank 1 masters, and the rest were rank 2 masters. He was secretly speechless. He did not expect rank 1 masters to be so worthless. He thought they were rare. Fortunately, there were not that many supreme masters, so they were still very valuable. Otherwise, the Grandmaster's strength would be too shocking. Under everyone's gaze, he slowly walked to the front of the hall. Song Lin Fist saluted and said, "Clan leader, deputy clan leader, Chu Li is here. Come in." Song Qingji said in a low voice. Chu Li stepped into the hall and Fist saluted. There were only 3 people standing in the hall. Song Qingji and 2 old men stood in front of a white jade statue that was as tall as a person, looking at him solemnly. This white jade statue emitted a warm luster, and its face was lifelike. It was a middle-aged man in high spirits, thin and handsome, staring at him as if he was still alive. Chu Li stood at the entrance of the hall. He could feel the pressure coming from it even from afar. This statue was really carved by a master. It contained a huge aura, as if a supreme master was standing in front of him. Song Qingji said in a low voice, "This is a commandment set by the first clan leader of the White Dew clan. This commandment is not to kill each other, or else the entire White Dew clan will kill you." Chu Li Fist saluted and nodded. Song Qingji said, "Chu Li, I won't hide it from you. In 2 months, the White Dew clan will enter the foreign battlefield to fight against the Azuras. It's very dangerous. If you regret it, you don't have to join the White Dew clan." Chu Li said without hesitation, "Clan leader, this is exactly what I want. I want to kill the Azuras the most, but I've always regretted not being able to find their lair. If I can't find the Azura boundary, it'll be best if I can kill them." Song Qingji smiled, and so did the other 2 deputy clan leaders. Song Qingji said, "In that case, you're determined to join the White Dew clan?" "Yes," Chu Li said in a low voice. "Good, from today onwards, you'll be a true disciple of the White Dew clan. No matter what your previous identity was, from now on, you're a member of the White Dew clan," Song Qingji said slowly. As he spoke, he took a jade tag from the side and handed it to Chu Li. "This is the White Dew clan's identity tag. With this, you can sense the disciples of the clan within 100 miles. Use this to ask for help or help your fellow disciples." Chu Li took it with both hands and kept it in his arms. The jade was only the size of a silver coin. Rather than calling it a jade tag, it was better to call it a jade pendant. It was very suitable to be worn around the neck. It was cool to the touch and contained a powerful force. One look and anyone could tell that it was a treasure. Song Qingji said, "This identity tag is a treasure. With it, you can obtain power and save your life in a critical moment." Chu Li looked at him in shock. Song Qingji said, "Through this tag, you can absorb the power in this statue. Your inner energy will not dry up. Also, the power in this statue is accumulated by everyone. You can inject it through the jade tag." Chu Li took out the jade tag and looked at it again. Song Qingji said, "That's why you must keep this jade tag well. Don't drop it. Try to inject your inner energy into the jade tag." Chu Li nodded and injected a wave of inner energy into the silver coin-sized jade tag. Chapter 1978. After injecting his inner energy into the jade pendant, there was no reaction. He looked at Song Qingji in shock. Song Qingji slapped his forehead. "I remember now. Chu Li hasn't learned the White Dew technique yet." The 2 Vice Hall masters nodded. Song Qingji took out a thin booklet and threw it to Chu Li. "This is the White Dew heart technique. Take a good look." Chu Li took it and flipped through it. He nodded and returned it to Song Qingji with both hands. "Do you remember?" Song Qingji smiled. Chu Li nodded. "You're really smart," Song Qingji said. "Because of the scripture of life and death, it was not visible on the outside. Therefore, Chu Li's body quality could not be seen to be too good, only ordinary. However, it was extremely shocking that he could cultivate to such an extent. Chu smiled and closed his eyes to regulate his breathing. The white dew technique was not a complicated heart technique. On the contrary, it was very simple. It was more like a driving heart technique for a palm technique. After a few breaths, Chu was already familiar with it. His inner energy circulated according to the white dew technique. The small round jade pendant in his hand was like a whirlpool, engulfing the inner energy he sent over. In a short while, he had used up more than half of his inner energy, but the round jade pendant did not feel full at all. Through the round jade pendant, he could vaguely sense the existence of the white jade statue. It was indeed mysterious and unpredictable. It was similar to his mystic tortoise shield. However, the advantage of the mystic tortoise shield was that it could be used as a tortoise shell, while the white jade statue could transmit inner energy from a distance. It was even more mysterious. Deep down, he was a little excited. As expected of a grandmaster, not only were there many mystical arts and ultimate skills, there were also these treasures. Thinking about it, it made sense. To be able to live for 10,000 years, any skill that was researched would reach the pinnacle of perfection. It was far from what a person who could live for 200 or 300 years could compare with. Therefore, it was only natural that the skills of the realm beyond heaven far surpassed those of the lower realm. Reverse white dew mantra, Song Qingji said. Chu nodded. Circulating the white dew heart mantra, a gurgling inner force immediately surged from the round jade pendant, endlessly pouring into his body. Although it wasn't as turbulent as when he used the life and death scripture to circulate his spiritual energy, it was already extremely rare, like an endless spring. Song Qingji smiled and said, "How is it?" Chu exclaimed, "You're indeed powerful. With this, our White Dew Hall disciples won't have to worry about lacking inner strength." Song Qingji said proudly, "You can use your inner energy to your heart's content. You can use whatever move has the greatest power. You don't have to worry about not having enough inner energy." Chu said, "Clan leader, I don't think there are enough people outside." Song Qingji's smile faded, and the faces of the other two Vice Hall masters darkened. Chu was puzzled. Song Qingji sighed, "You are now one of our brothers, not an outsider. There is no need to hide it from you, those brothers are all dead." Chu was surprised. Song Qingji said, "Last time, we were unlucky in the foreign battlefield and lost a lot of people. This time, we have to take revenge and clean up the Azura." Chu frowned. "So many of them died? How many people are there in Azura?" "I don't know." Song Qingji shook his head. "No one has investigated the Azura realm. I don't know how many people there are. It's been so many years, but you still don't know how many Azuras there are." Chu was surprised. Song Qingji shook his head. "Can't be helped, no one can sneak into the Azura realm. How can we find out the actual situation? We only know that we can't kill them all. Once we kill a batch, another batch will appear. The heart of Azura cannot be destroyed, it is endless." Chu said, "Is there no treasure from the Grandmaster that can destroy the heart of Azura?" "No." Song Qingji said, "Don't have such wishful thinking, think about how to kill Azura. The heart of Azura needs some time to grow into an Azura, so as long as we kill enough Azura, we can weaken their strength." Chu slowly nodded. Bang! A muffled sound was heard, causing the ground to shake. Chu frowned. He had already seen the situation outside. 5 young men were standing outside the White Dew Hall, and they had kicked the door open. The main door of the White Dew Hall was made of bronze and carved with strange patterns. Clearly, there was something special about it. At this moment, it was sent flying by a kick and sank into the pine life-prolonging screen. It looked like it was embedded in the screen. The leading young man had thick eyebrows and big eyes. He was not considered handsome, but he was full of heroic spirit. His eyes were like lightning. He had the aura of a fierce tiger coming down the mountain. He led the 4 young men over the screen and into the martial arts field. His gaze slowly swept across the more than 1,000 White Dew Hall disciples. He let out a cold smile and scoffed. I heard that a new disciple of the White Dew Hall joined? Or an enlightened master from the lower realm? Han Zheng, don't be arrogant! Someone shouted angrily. Han Zheng, the young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes, laughed coldly. When did the White Dew Hall fall to such a state? They must be so hungry that they can't be choosy. How dare they recruit an enlightened master from the lower realm, throwing aside the rules of the Hall of Rain Masters? What a joke! Han Zheng, this is none of your business. Your Autumn Frost Hall has no right to interfere with the White Dew Hall. I'm not a disciple of the White Dew Hall, I'm a disciple of the Hall of Rain Masters. I will not allow this kind of trash to enter the Hall of Rain Masters. Han Zheng said coldly. You guys still have the face to speak in front of me? Han Zheng. Song Qingji stepped out of the hall and shouted. Han Zheng saw Song Qingji. He put away his arrogance, closed fist saluted and said, Greetings, Hall Leader Song. How dare you? Song Qingji said coldly. Do you think there's no one in the White Dew Hall? Han Zheng laughed and said, Hall Leader Song, please forgive me. I heard that your hall recruited an enlightened master from the lower realm. I was angry, so I came to see if it's true. Hall Leader Song, are you really going to break the rules of the Hall of Rain Masters? The Hall of Rain Masters doesn't recruit enlightened masters who ascended from the lower realm, right? Song Qingji scoffed. That's right. Han Zheng scoffed. Song Qingji said, Chu Li did not ascend. He came directly from the Divine Gate. He came with his body, it doesn't count as ascension. Hall Leader Song, you're purposely taking advantage of a loophole. Everyone knows the rules of the Hall of Rain Masters. You're not being honorable. Han Zheng was stunned. He gritted his teeth and scoffed. This is not a wise move. It's not up to you to judge whether it's wise or not, Song Qingji said. Chu Li, teach him a lesson, let him know the power of the White Dew Hall. Yes, Hall Leader, Chu Li said. He saw that the people around him were angry but did not make a move. Han Zheng's cultivation level was like the sea. His aura was monstrous. It was obvious that his cultivation level was suppressing them. Although Song Qingji was confident that he could defeat Han Zheng, he could not make a move due to his identity, or else the White Dew Hall would be embarrassed. They would not be able to raise their heads in front of the other three halls. Chu Li slowly walked down the stairs, came to the center, and stopped in front of Han Zheng and the other four. Han Zheng sized Chu Li up, he sneered. You're that Chu Li? Chu Li said calmly. You trespassed into the White Dew Hall, break an arm and leave. What did you say? Han Zheng was stunned. Chu Li said lightly. Break an arm and leave, I won't pursue it anymore. If I make a move, it won't be just an arm. Ha ha! Han Zheng laughed out loud. He was overjoyed. The four young men behind him also laughed. They looked at Chu Li as if they were looking at a lunatic. Chapter 1979. The people from the White Dew clan looked worried as they stared at Chu Li. This Han Zheng was the #1 expert of the Autumn Frost Hall and was also a famous genius. In the entire realm beyond Avalon, he was an outstanding talent. His martial arts prowess was impressive, and no one could stand in his way. It was said that he was already the next Autumn Frost Hall leader. Although Chu Li's fame was extremely great, being able to kill a great Azura and survive the assassination attempt of a great Azura, he could also be considered a rare genius. However, there was still a huge gap between him and Han Zheng. They weren't on the same level. It would be very difficult for him to win. If Han Zheng was so easy to deal with, they would have done it long ago. Chu Li would not have had to do it. Seeing Chu Li's calm expression and cold gaze, the people who were laughing stopped as they felt bored and regained their composure. Han Zheng shook his head. How arrogant of you! Chu Li, this isn't the lower realm. Chu Li said, if this was the lower realm, you wouldn't have the right to speak to me. How arrogant! Why don't you go to the lower realm? Han Zheng sneered. He hated the gods of the lower realms to the extreme, because his parents were killed by the gods who ascended from the lower realms. Therefore, whenever he saw the gods of the lower realms, he wanted to immediately kill them. He wished that he could kill all the gods who ascended from the lower realms in the sky beyond heaven. Chu Li said, "I'm here for the Azuras." "Humph, you make it sound nice, but you're just greedy for the prosperity and beauty of the Outland." Han Zheng sneered. Chu Li said, "Even if that's the case, it's none of your business. Why did you barge in at this time and humiliate the White Dew clan? If I let you go today, anyone can come and cause trouble in the White Dew clan. Cut the crap and do it." Han Zheng gritted his teeth. He wanted to kill Chu Li with one slap. Chu Li extended his hand. "Come." His expression was calm, as if he was a master instructing his disciple. Han Zheng snorted angrily. He took a step forward and approached Chu Li. Then, he lightly slapped his palm down. Chu Li unsheathed his longsword. Hundreds of years of his lifespan had already surged into the regal heaven sword. It turned into a fleeting and slow sword light and slowly slashed at Han Zheng's neck, whose body had been locked and whose movements were sluggish. Song Qingji was just about to raise his hand to shout when he saw the long sword sweep past his neck and cut across Han Zheng's right arm. Chi! Han Zheng's right arm fell to the ground, blood gushing out from his shoulder. Han Zheng took a step back and pressed on his right arm. His eyes were like torches as he glared at Chu Li. Chu Li sheathed his sword and looked at him calmly. The bleeding on Han Zheng's right shoulder quickly stopped. With a wave of his left hand, he blocked the spirit pills that his companion had brought to him. He glared at Chu Li and asked in a hoarse voice, "What sword technique is this?" "Sky Regicide Sword," Chu Li said calmly. "It's said to be the original antique study of the City of 10,000 Swords." "Alright, fine." Han Zheng gritted his teeth and slowly said, "Today, I admit defeat. I'll come again another day." Chu Li smiled faintly. "Why bother humiliating yourself?" Han Zheng sneered. "I will catch up to you." "Bring it on then." Chu Li said, "It might not be an arm next time." Han Zheng gritted his teeth and scoffed. With a wave of his left arm, he kept the severed arm in his hand and turned to leave. When he faced the Sky Regicide sword earlier, he thought it was going to cut his neck. He did not expect the Sky Regicide sword to go around his neck and then to his shoulder. It was obvious that Chu Li was merciful and did not really kill him. No matter how angry he was and how embarrassed he still accepted Chu Li's kindness and could not speak ill of him. Chu Li turned to look at Song Qingji and sighed. "Clan leader, did I go too far?" "Ha ha!" Song Qingji laughed and shook his head. No, it's not heavy at all." A deputy clan leader beside him said helplessly, "Clan leader, you still have to be careful. Don't let the front hall secretary catch you. It's just a broken arm, it can be reattached soon. What's so heavy about it?" Song Qingji scoffed and said snappily, "He dared to kick down our White Dew clan's door. If we don't cut off his arm, others will really think that there's no one in the White Dew clan." As he spoke, his gaze slowly swept across the crowd. Everyone showed a helpless expression and avoided his gaze. Their faces were burning. They really felt embarrassed. In such a big White Dew clan, there was no one who could stop Han Zheng. If it was not for Chu Li who just came in, they would have really lost face this time. The White Dew clan might not be able to raise their heads again. It was inevitable to give everyone the impression that the White Dew clan was getting worse and worse. They could not even raise their heads in the martial arts world. Even with the reputation of one of the 9 great clans, they could not raise their head. When they thought of this, they all looked at Chu Li. Before this, they still had doubts. They felt that the clan leader wanted to risk the entire Rain Master Palace's condemnation and insisted on pulling him into the clan. Now it seemed that the clan leader was indeed the clan leader. He had the foresight. Chu Li said embarrassedly. He didn't know the severity of the situation. I just felt that it was too infuriating for him to be so unscrupulous. I could only cut off one of his arms. But take good care of it when you go back. There won't be any hidden dangers. Don't worry. Song Qingji smiled and waved his hand. He scoffed. As long as we don't kill that brat, nothing will happen. He's too arrogant. He really thinks that there's no one in the White Du clan. Chu Li let out a long sigh. Song Qingji sighed. I really didn't expect this. Chu Li looked up at him again. Song Qingji looked at the sovereign descending sword at his waist. I really didn't expect the Sky Killer sword to be so powerful. When everyone heard this, they looked at the Sky Killer sword at Chu Li's waist. Their expressions changed slightly. They thought that if they were in Han Zheng's shoes, they would not be stronger than him. It would be difficult for them to avoid this sword. It was really strange. A deputy clan leader said, "Clan leader, are the 9 swords of the city of 10,000 swords so powerful? I don't think so. If the Sky Killer sword is so powerful, then the other 8 swords are probably the same." Song Qingji nodded slowly. The city of 10,000 swords really can't be underestimated. Everyone, be careful. Chu Li said, "Clan leader, the power of this Sky Killer sword depends on the consumption of lifespan. Just now, I used up almost 1,000 years of my lifespan. I can't use up 1,000 years of my lifespan in the lower realm." He also realized that the Sky Killer sword's power was getting stronger. In the Outland, he could use up more lifespan. It was more than twice as powerful as in the lower realm. That was why he could injure Han Zheng. If it was the same power as before, he would not be able to do anything to Han Zheng. Han Zheng didn't seem to be able to withstand a single attack from him. He seemed to be very weak, but he was actually the strongest person he had ever met. He wasn't any weaker than Song Qingji, and yet he was still so young. He was truly a genius. The price is a little high. Song Qingji sighed. Chu Li nodded. The Sky Killer sword can only be used during crucial moments. I dare not use it too often. That's true. Song Qingji said, "It's a pity that this sword can only be used as a normal treasure sword. It doesn't have the sovereign descending sword technique to complement it." Clan leader will have a way. Chu Li smiled. Song Qingji laughed out loud. "Thank you. Chu Li, you're now a disciple of the White Du clan. When you leave the city in the future, be careful of the other clans and the front hall department. Especially the front hall department. Don't provoke them." Chu Li smiled and nodded. Chapter 1980. The shout was like thunder, shaking the crowd and stirring their blood. Their bodies tensed up as they stared at a middle-aged man who walked around the screen. The middle-aged man wore a green robe that fluttered as if he was standing in a strong wind. His body was as strong as an ox, and his rough face was covered with a layer of frost. His gaze was especially cold as he glanced at the crowd and landed on Chu Li. Chu Li frowned and looked at Song Qingji. Song Qingji's expression was ugly as he said, "Han Jiangchuan, what do you think the White Du clan is? You think you can come and go as you please?" "Why, I can't come to the White Du clan," the middle-aged man sneered. As he spoke, he walked past Chu Li with his hands behind his back. He arrived at the bottom of the hall stairs and was only 3 steps away from Song Qingji. "Are you here to take revenge for Han Zheng?" Song Qingji laughed and shook his head. "You beat up the young and the old. Is this all the Autumn Frost clan is capable of? No matter how weak the Autumn Frost clan is, taking care of the White Du clan is a piece of cake." Han Jiangchuan said coldly, cutting off Han Zheng's arm, "The White Du clan is getting more and more temperamental. Is this Chu Li?" Chu Li fist saluted. "Greetings, Hall Leader Han." He knew that Han Jiangchuan was the Autumn Frost clan's hall leader and had met him in secret. He had met the hall leaders of the 4 clans and 1 sector and secretly predicted their fates. "Hee hee, you flatter me." Han Jiangchuan waved his hand and sneered. My good-for-nothing nephew is indebted to you for taking care of him. I really have to thank you for losing an arm." Chu Li looked at him in confusion. Han Jiangchuan scoffed and said, "He has such a cultivation base at such a young age. He can be considered a genius. His arrogance has also skyrocketed along with his martial arts. Let him suffer a little and take away some of his prestige. It will be good for him." Chu Li smiled. "I flatter you. It'll be good for him, but it'll also be bad." Han Jiangchuan sneered. "He'll need a long time to heal after losing an arm. It'll delay his cultivation." Chu Li replied, "Clan leader Han wants to seek justice for Han Zheng. I'm just here to see who's the one who managed to hurt Han Zheng." Han Jiangchuan scoffed. "I've heard a lot about you." Chu Li gave a fist salute. "You flatter me." He knew that Han Jiangchuan wouldn't attack him because of his status. He couldn't afford to lose face. Even if he attacked, it would be Song Qingji. Han Jiangchuan looked at Song Qingji and sneered. "I heard that Hall Master Song has obtained the Monarch Descent Sword?" "That's right," Song Qingji said indifferently. "What, are you jealous and want to snatch the sword?" Han Jiangchuan said coldly, "Your White Dew Hall won't be able to protect this sword. Hand it over to our Autumn Frost Hall." "Ridiculous!" Song Qingji snapped. "If you want a treasured sword, go to the city of 10,000 swords to fight for it. Don't even think about us." "I'm doing this out of good intentions," Han Jiangchuan scoffed. "This Monarch Descent sword will offset Han Zheng's injury. It'll also help you take over your grudge with the city of 10,000 swords. Your White Dew Hall won't be able to withstand the city of 10,000 swords' crazy attack. You don't have to worry about the city of 10,000 swords. The Monarch Descent sword belongs to the White Dew Hall." Song Qingji said coldly, "Please leave. We don't welcome you here." "Song Qingji, are you really going to destroy the White Dew Hall because of your greed?" Han Jiangchuan frowned. Song Qingji sneered, "You don't have to worry about it. If you're really attacked by the city of 10,000 swords, don't ask for our help." Han Jiangchuan sneered. "The sword belongs to you, but you still want us to sacrifice our lives for you. That depends on your capabilities." Song Qingji scoffed. "Let's see if you dare to not save us." Han Jiangchuan shook his head and turned to leave. Stubborn. As he walked past Chu Li, an invisible force surged towards him. It was the Palm Force that was hidden behind him. It was silent, but it was as turbulent as a raging wave. It was almost unstoppable. It was deep and violent. Chu Li frowned. A faintly discernible golden light shone from his body. Bang! After a muffled sound, Chu Li stood firmly on the same spot. However, his clothes fluttered as if he was being blown by a strong wind. At this moment, everyone knew that Chu Li had been attacked. Song Qingji roared, "Han Jiangchuan, you're despicable." He did not expect Han Jiangchuan to be so despicable and shameless. He did not care about his identity and attacked Chu Li. Chu Li was now one of the pillars of the White Dew Hall. He was the most powerful force. He could not be crippled by Han Jiangchuan. Han Jiangchuan was not his nephew, Han Zheng. His cultivation level was purer and deeper. Without the help of the Regal Sky Sword, Chu Li could not stop Han Jiangchuan. Chu Li shook his head. "Clan leader, it's fine." Han Jiangchuan had already walked to the side of the screen. He turned to look at Chu Li and said, "His reputation is well deserved. Han Zheng's loss is not an injustice." Han Jiangchuan, stop right there! Song Qingji shouted and rushed towards Han Jiangchuan. However, Han Jiangchuan disappeared in a flash. His voice came from the sky. "If you have such thoughts, you should be careful of the city of 10,000 swords." Song Qingji did not chase after him. He stood in the void and roared, "Mind your own business." He angrily returned to the main hall and looked at Chu Li with concern. "Are you all right?" Chu Li smiled and shook his head. "I'm not hurt." "Good. Good." Song Qingji's tensed face relaxed. He was all smiles. Haha, let's see how the Autumn Frost Hall can strut around this time. From now on, it's better for them to be submissive in front of the White Dew Hall. Everyone smiled. The way they looked at Chu Li became gentler. They had already accepted Chu Li as one of them. Song Qingji waved his hand. Go about your business. Don't leave the town. Be careful of the people from the city of 10,000 swords. Yes. Everyone shouted in unison. Chu Li said, Clan leader, will the city of 10,000 swords really dare to come and seek revenge? Aren't they afraid of the Hall of Rain Masters? Sigh. Song Qingji glanced at the people who had left. He looked around the empty courtyard and sighed. The Hall of Rain Masters is not the Hall of Rain Masters of the past. Its deterrence is not as strong. It won't be able to shake the city of 10,000 sword. Looks like we have to teach them a lesson, Chu Li said, so that they won't dare to act recklessly. The people from the city of 10,000 swords. Song Qingji frowned. He had underestimated the city of 10,000 swords. After seeing Chu Li use the Sky Killer Sword, he knew that the power of the 9 swords was at this level. The city of 10,000 swords had been keeping a low profile all these years. Everyone had underestimated them. They felt that the 9 swords could not be combined into one, so there was nothing to worry about. They all underestimated the power of a single sword. Now that they saw the power of the Sky Killer Sword, they were even more afraid. Everyone in the Outland knew that the city of 10,000 swords was obsessed with the Sky Killer Sword. They had been searching for it. Now that it had finally appeared, they would not give up easily. This was the chance for the 9 swords to combine into one. It was the chance for the city of 10,000 swords to regain its glory. Suddenly, hurried footsteps were heard. A young man hurried over and said, Clan leader, the people from the city of 10,000 swords are here. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Song Qingji scoffed. How many? 9. The young man whispered, but they have already entered the city. Everyone is trying to stop them, but can't stop them? Song Qingji frowned. The young man shook his head. Their sword force is very strange. They have already injured 10 of us. Chapter 1981. Song Qingji did not scold the disciples for being useless. The disciples of the White Dew Hall were all top-notch masters. The fact that 10 of them were injured only proved that the guests from the City of Thousand Swords were more powerful. He turned his head and said, Let's go take a look. Chu Li, you come too. Chu Li nodded and said, Clan leader, I can't use the Sky Regaining Sword anymore. I've experienced the sword formation of the City of Thousand Swords. It's really powerful and we have to guard against it. If it can injure you, even if it's a sneak attack, it can't be underestimated. Song Qingji nodded. Chu Li's martial arts was now the best among the disciples of the White Dew Hall. No one could match him. If he could not block the sword formation, the other disciples would not be able to either. It seemed like he and the 2 deputy clan leaders had to make a move. Song Qingji leaped into the air. Chu Li followed closely beside him. Clan leader, do we have a joint attack formation? Yes. Song Qingji nodded. But it's not top-notch. It's still inferior to the formation of the City of Thousand Swords. Chu Li said, We're the Rain Master Palace. Song Qingji looked down from the void and saw the 9 people from the City of Thousand Swords and the disciples of the White Dew Hall surrounding them on the street. He said, Do you think formations are easy to learn? Formation masters are rare and precious. Other skills and martial arts can be slowly learned over time. Even if you learn slowly, you can still improve through accumulation. Formations are purely a matter of talent. If you can't learn it, you won't be able to even after 10,000 years. Chu Li nodded in agreement. Formations could only be learned by pure intelligence. Without enough intelligence, there was no way to learn formations. It was like elementary school students studying mathematics. Even if they had all the textbooks from primary school to university, most elementary school students would not be able to learn advanced mathematics. However, there were always those with special intelligence who could learn it. Formations were no different from advanced mathematics. Only those with rare intelligence could learn them. Even though the heavens beyond heaven was rich in spiritual energy and people lived for tens of thousands of years, their intelligence was not higher than that of the people in the lower realm. Only a few people could see through the wonders of formations. Clan leader, I'm proficient in formations, Chuli said. As a deity of the lower realm, if he wanted to occupy the position of the Rain Master Hall Master, he would need great power and sufficient intelligence. Only then would he be able to make others look up to him. This meant that he had to display all of his abilities and could not hide them. Once there was a chance, he could not let it go. You know array formations? Song Qingji was surprised. Chuli replied slowly, Yes, I've learned some formations in the lower realm. Unfortunately, the formation path in the lower realm is rather crude, and it's not as exquisite as the Grandmaster's. Haha, good. Song Qingji laughed twice, his originally gloomy face beaming with joy. I didn't expect you to be an array Grandmaster. When we go back, I will collect array formation books for you. If you can really help our disciples learn array formations, it will be a great merit. Chuli smiled. I can give it a try. The two vice-clan leaders stared at Chuli's back with bright eyes. They could not wait for Chuli to go back and not let him fight anymore. As one of the 9 divisions, the Rain Master Palace had a formation master overseeing it. However, they needed too many formation masters and had no time to care about the 4 divisions and 1 division. These formation masters were responsible for the operation of the Rain Master Palace's formation. Their responsibilities were very important. Although the White Dew Hall had a formation that could be used and could be practiced according to the formation, it was not powerful enough. Every formation was subtle and profound and needed to be adjusted carefully. Without the guidance of a formation master, one could only copy a set of formation. Although they could get some power, it would not be as powerful as the original. If Chuli's appearance could really make up for the weakness of the White Dew Hall, then it would be too crucial for the White Dew Hall. The formation grandmasters were all recruited by the headquarters of the 9 divisions and received the best treatment. They could study formations in peace and comprehend the mysteries of heaven and earth. Who would still want to go to the lower levels and be disturbed by trivial matters and mundane affairs? Formation masters often liked to study, liked peace, and did not like mundane affairs. Wealth and glory were not goals for them. Moreover, when they arrived at the 9 divisions' headquarters, they could get all these things. They did not need to spend time and effort to pursue it. They only needed to focus on the study of array formations. Even if Chuli was not proficient in array formations, as long as he knew a little bit, it would be extremely valuable. Ding, 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 ding. The clear ringing sounds did not stop. The 9 old men wielded their swords and strode forward along the main street towards the White Dew Hall. The White Dew Hall disciples who were blocking the way in front and sneak attacking them from behind could not break through. Chuli stood in the void and frowned as he looked at the sword formation. He shook his head. He did not know what kind of sword formation it was. He had never seen it before. However, its power was shocking, especially the 9 elders' cultivation levels. They were only slightly weaker than Han Zheng. Looks like the city of 10,000 swords is really anxious. They've sent out their elite. Song Qingji scoffed. Chuli asked, Are there many people with such cultivation levels in the city of 10,000 swords? Not too many. Song Qingji shook his head. Some old monsters don't usually come out. These people are only the elites of the city of 10,000 swords. But don't worry, they have old monsters, the Rain Master Palace has them too. Chuli asked, Are they those who have cultivated for more than 1,000 years? Only those who have cultivated for more than 2,000 years. Song Qingji said, 1,000 years is a big hurdle. Many people can't overcome it. Isn't it 10,000 years? Chu Li was stunned. He always thought that Devas lived for 10,000 years. He did not expect to hear this. Song Qingji smiled and shook his head. Clan leader, looks like we have to use formations. Deputy clan leader Mo Hing said. Another deputy clan leader, Fu Tianlei, scoffed. Yes, we have to use formations. Otherwise, the city of 10,000 swords will really think that there's no one in the White Dew Hall. Then let's use formations. Song Qingji said. Deputy clan leader Mo Hung let out a long whistle. The White Dew Hall disciples who were surrounding the 9-man sword formation suddenly floated and stood in their positions. Then, they formed a formation that enveloped the 9-man sword formation. A surging force covered the sky and covered the earth. Chu Li was surprised. He did not expect the White Dew Hall's formation to be so powerful. They have the guts to barge into our White Dew Hall with just 9 people. Today, they won't be able to leave. Song Qingji scoffed. Chu Li, look at everyone's formation. Chu Li nodded lightly. He focused on the White Dew Hall's formation. He realized that more than 100 people formed one layer and more than 300 people formed the second layer. Each of them stood in a formation. Even with his sharp eyes, he felt dizzy. This formation was no different from condensing more than 100 people in the formation to form an incomparably tyrannical force. Even if the 9 elders had a profound cultivation level, outstanding swordsmanship, and exquisite formations, they could not withstand the attacks of more than 100 people. Bang 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 bang. The 9 elders could not resist and were immediately sent flying. The sword formation was broken and they landed in the middle of the street, right below Chu Li and the others. Clan leader. Everyone gave a fist salute and said, "You guys go." Song Qingji waved his hand. Everyone gave a fist salute and carried their injured companions. They floated away and scattered all over the city. Chu Li's heart trembled. He realized that the subtlety of this formation was far beyond his imagination. Through this formation, it was like ants could bite an elephant to death. No matter how strong a martial arts master was, he would not have an easy time if he was trapped in this formation. He did not dare to say whether he would live or die if he fell into this formation. It was as overbearing as an unstoppable flood. Chapter 1982. How's our formation? Song Qingji turned to ask Chu Li. Chu Li shook his head and smiled bitterly. It's far beyond my imagination. I didn't expect our White Dew Hall's formation to be so exquisite. It's a good formation, but we haven't been able to unleash its full power. Otherwise, we wouldn't need so many people. Just 6 or 7 people would be enough to take care of these 9 fellows. Song Qingji snorted. This is our White Dew formation. Chu Li said, Clan leader, I need more formation books to study and the formation diagram of the White Dew formation. Let's go. Song Qingji turned and left. The 2 vice clan leaders followed closely and the 4 of them returned to the White Dew Hall. As for the 9 elders from the City of Thousand Swords, Song Qingji had no intention of killing them. They were already crippled and were left to fend for themselves. The people from the City of Thousand Swords would probably bring them back to recover their martial arts. The lifespan of Celestials was extremely long, so even if their martial arts were crippled, they could slowly recover. They just needed to cultivate in isolation for a few decades, but this would consume spirit medicine and spirit herbs. It was more harmful than beneficial to the sect. When the 4 of them arrived at the White Dew Hall, Song Qingji said, Chu Li, sit down and wait. I'll go get the formation books. He turned and left. Mo Hing sighed and shook his head. Looks like the City of Thousand Swords is testing our strength. Fu Tianlei said, This doesn't seem like the City of Thousand Swords way of doing things. It's said that the young governor of the City of Thousand Swords, Wan Ingjie, has started to take charge. Is that true? If it was Wan Bairu, he would have sent a large group of people to fight to the death. Mo Hing shook his head and smiled bitterly. Clan leader, the monarch descending sword is really a hot potato. In my opinion, it's better to exchange something with the City of Thousand Swords. There's no use in keeping it and it'll only create a death grudge. Chu Li shook his head. Clan leaders, the City of Thousand Swords doesn't just want the monarch descending sword, they also want my heaven-killing sword. Once the 9 swords become one, the City of Thousand Swords won't care about the White Dew Hall at all. Even the Rain Master Palace won't be in their eyes. By then, they can decide whether we live or die. That won't be a good feeling, right? That's true. The two of them nodded slowly. The legend of the 9 swords merging into one had been around for a long time. Everyone knew that once the 9 swords of the City of 10,000 Swords merged into one, they would no longer be afraid of the 9 divisions. At that time, they would become the 10 divisions. Meanwhile, the Rain Master Hall had been declining in recent years. They might not be able to stop the City of 10,000 Swords. All right, at this point, asking for peace is useless. Song Qingji strode in with a wooden box in his hand. He placed it in front of Chu Li with a bang and said in a deep voice, "We'll destroy our own prestige for no reason. Everyone will know that we're afraid of the City of 10,000 Swords. Then, everyone will look down on us and dare to step on us. This will bring disaster to the Hall of Rain Masters." There were countless grudges between the 9 divisions. Once the Rain Master Palace showed signs of weakness, they would definitely not mind stepping on them, causing the Rain Master Palace to decline even further and having one less competitor. These are all formation books. After you finish reading these, I'll show you the formation diagram of the White Dew Formation. Song Qingji said, "The White Dew Formation is very exquisite. It's the masterpiece of more than 10 formation masters." Chu Li understood what Song Qingji meant. If he could not understand the formation books in the box, he would not be able to understand the formation diagram of the White Dew Formation. Moreover, the formation diagram of the White Dew Formation was very important and needed to be kept secret. Chu Li closed fist saluted. "Clan leader, if there's nothing else, I'll go back and study the formation first." Go. Elder Song, follow Chu Li. "Don't let him be distracted," Song Qingji said. Song Lin, who was standing in the corner of the hall, closed fist saluted. "Yes." After Chu Li closed fist saluted the 3 clan leaders, he carried the heavy wooden box and walked out. He returned to his courtyard with Song Lin and placed the wooden box on the stone table in the gazebo in the courtyard. He slowly opened it and took out 10 thick yellowed books. After he read them one by one, he started with the book Formation Insight. Soon, he was so engrossed that he did not know how much time had passed. After reading the 2 books on formations, he informed Song Qingji that he would be returning to the lower realm. Then, he spent the night with Shao Qi and the others. The next day, he returned to the Outland and returned to his courtyard to continue studying formations. The formation he was learning now was different from before. Back then, he cultivated the wisdom origin scripture, which was a method to increase one's wisdom. However, his brain power was not strong enough, so it was not strenuous but exquisite. Now that he had the heavenly star insight and the omniscient mirror, he could learn formations without any obstacles. In one breath, he finished reading all the formation books in the box. His understanding of formations improved by leaps and bounds and could not be compared to before. He asked Song Lin to inform clan leader Song Qingji that he could read the White Dew Formation. Song Qingji personally brought the formation diagram of the White Dew Formation over. He changed into a white robe and looked more elegant, Chapter 1983. While Chu Li was moving, Song Qingji had already summoned 100 men. After Chu Li drew a circle, he slowly said to the 100 men, "Yang is the circle, Yin is the triangle. I don't have to explain the footwork of the white dew formation. Everyone is familiar with it. Now, try to get into position." Everyone silently went to their respective circles. Chu Li's battle with Han Zheng had already established enough prestige. Although everyone still felt that he was too inexperienced and that he was still an enlightened master from the lower realm, they would not say much in front of the clan leader and would not disobey his orders. "Let's begin," Chu Li said when he saw everyone in position. The middle-aged man in the middle immediately spun his feet and began to move. He stepped on the triangle, then the circle. Once he moved, everyone else moved as well. Suddenly, they formed a blurry shadow that was dazzling to the naked eye. Their faces and movements could not be seen clearly with the naked eye, only a fleeting shadow. Chu Li, on the other hand, stared at the operation of the formation with bright eyes. He activated the omniscient mirror and the heavenly star insight skill to imprint their every move in his mind. He began to analyze each person's cultivation level and body movement technique. After a quarter of an hour, Chu Li closed his eyes and waved his hand. "Stop," Song Qingji said. Everyone suddenly stopped as if a gust of wind had stopped. The atmosphere was calm, but there was an invisible force surging. The other 100 or so people at the side felt suffocated. They wanted to retreat but held on, not wanting to embarrass themselves in front of the clan leader. Song Qingji's gaze fell on Chu Li's face. The others' gazes were also on Chu Li to see what he had to say. The omniscient mirror in Chu Li's mind showed the movement of the formation and each person's footwork. After the formation of 100 people was activated, it looked like a blurry blur, but in fact, everyone was moving according to their own trajectory. 100 people had 100 trajectories that intertwined with each other. Without a huge brain power like his, how could he analyze it clearly? Everyone looked at Chu Li motionlessly. The huge white dew hall was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. People unconsciously breathed softly so that their breathing sounds could not be heard. They were all people with high cultivation levels. After holding their breath, they stopped breathing and changed to internal breathing. After a quarter of an hour, Chu Li slowly opened his eyes. "Chu Li, how is it?" Song Qingji asked. Chu Li nodded. His gaze swept across the crowd, and then he waved his hand. Song Qingji hurriedly said, "Make way, make way!" The 100 people who had been standing in a row all retreated to the sides, leaving an empty space around them. Chu Li's body turned into a shadow as he gently rubbed his palms together. Instantly, the circle and triangle on the ground disappeared. This light palm strike caused everyone's hearts to tremble and their expressions to turn solemn. They would definitely not be able to lift a heavy palm as if it were light. The exquisiteness of the palm was almost divine, and it was not something that could be achieved with martial arts. Chu Li's hands moved again, and circles and triangles appeared on the ground one after another. The crowd was dazzled and dizzy, and they subconsciously wanted to turn their heads away. Chu Li withdrew his palm and glanced at the densely packed ground. He nodded in satisfaction and raised his voice. "This is the real white dew formation. The distance of each step has been adjusted according to everyone's physique and cultivation level. Everyone, step accurately. The more accurate, the more powerful it will be. Quick, quick!" Song Qingji shouted impatiently and waved his hand. Everyone landed lightly in their respective circles, nimble and swift. Then, they followed the movements of the middle-aged man in the center and stepped out. TSS. With a silent whistling sound, everyone's body became dazed. It was as if they had fallen into a lake, and their every move was watched through the clear and swaying lake water. It was blurry yet clear. The bodies of these 100 people gradually began to emit a hazy light that became brighter and brighter. Later, they connected and formed a light shield that enveloped them. Their bodies could no longer be seen clearly, only a light. Song Qingji's eyes lit up as he rubbed his hands and feet. Chu Li stared at them with a burning gaze. He was still using the omniscient mirror to observe. He had already seen through the wonders of the formation, and the omniscient mirror could easily see through it. It was completely different from everyone else's gaze. As he observed, he carefully observed their footstep. They were still not precise enough. However, these 100 people could clearly feel the difference in the white dew formation. It was as if their bodies were supported by a clear air, and their footsteps became lighter and faster. Their speed was twice as fast as before, and the consumption of inner energy was reduced by half. It was unbelievable. They became more and more energetic, and their footsteps became more precise. Every movement was more precise than the one before, and the light around their bodies became brighter and brighter. Everyone's inner energy seemed to be connected as one, and their bodies were surging with a sense of power. They wanted nothing more than to roar at the sky, or to fight with others. "It's done," Chu Li said in a low voice. Everyone reluctantly stopped. The formation immediately paused as the light slowly entered their bodies. They all felt refreshed and full of energy as if they had just had a good sleep. "It's almost done. What do you think, clan leader?" Chu Li turned to look at Song Qingji and smiled. Song Qingji clapped and laughed. "Good. Very good. Ha!" He grinned and laughed as if he could see the White Dew Hall's proud and elated scene. The other 3 halls and 1 department were stunned, envious and jealous. He suddenly stopped smiling and said in a low voice, "No one is allowed to tell anyone about this. It must be kept a secret." "Yes," everyone responded. Song Qingji scoffed. "If anyone leaks the news of our formation's improvement, they will be punished with the crime of rebellion." Everyone's expression turned serious as they said in a low voice, "Yes." Song Qingji was still a little worried. He glanced at everyone and scoffed. "I think everyone knows the importance of a formation master. If the other halls knew about this, they would do everything they could to snatch Chu Li away and force him to improve the formation. We'll be trampled by them again. This time, we'll go to the foreign battleground and give everyone a big surprise. We'll make enough contributions to surprise them." Everyone's eyes lit up and they became excited. The White Dew Hall was suppressed by the other 3 halls and 1 department. It was time for them to be proud and elated. Chu Li said, "Clan leader, we haven't tried the power of the formation." "Chu Li, is there even a need to try?" Song Qingji laughed. "One look and you can tell that the formation's power has greatly increased. It's incomparable to the original." Chu Li smiled. "We should still try." "All right, then let's try. Let the strongest formation deal with this one," Song Qingji said. He raised his voice and said, "Elder Mo, go get the men." "All right." Mo Heng agreed and fluttered away with a smile. Song Qingji patted Chu Li's shoulder and chuckled. "Chu Li, you've done a great job this time. What reward do you want? Let me know later. I'll satisfy you as long as I can." Chu Li Fist saluted and nodded with a smile. Soon, 100 elders fluttered in. Their aura was monstrous and turbulent like a huge wave. They were the White Dew Hall's elite team with the highest cultivation level. Song Qingji did not say much. He only asked them to start setting up the formation and fight it out. Chapter 1984. The 2 formations clashed and the result shocked everyone. The 100 elders did not last more than 10 moves and were all sent flying. The formation was broken and they all fell to the ground, unable to get up. "Ha ha!" Song Qingji's laughter was deafening. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He did not expect it to have such an effect. Mo Heng and Fu Tianlei looked at the elderly men on the ground in shock, then at Chu Li with smiles on their faces. This was a real increase in power. They did not expect the White Dew formation to be so powerful just by drawing a few circles and triangles as if it was child's play. It was truly shocking. They also thought that Chu Li would be able to increase the White Dew formation's power after mastering formations, but they did not expect it to be this much. This was only the weakest formation, but it was able to suppress the strongest formation. It really felt like he was reborn. If it was the strongest formation, the White Dew formation's power would be more than a few times stronger. Everyone stared at Chu Li with their eyes wide open, unable to hide their enthusiasm. Chu Li said, "Clan leader, every formation needs to be improved, and it needs to be turned into a small formation. 100 people in a formation is too inflexible. It's best if 5 people in a formation. This can't be done in a short period of time." Haha, there's no rush. Every little change counts. Song Qingji looked at Chu Li with a strange and passionate gaze. Chu Li felt a little weak under his gaze and quickly said, "It's best if we can find a few courtyards so that they don't interfere with each other. I'll change 4 formations a day and try to finish in the shortest time possible." "All right, I'll listen to you." Song Qingji's voice was gentle and friendly. "Isn't it too tiring to change 4 formations a day? Why don't you change 2? He couldn't wait to change all the formations in one go, but he knew that it would take a lot of effort. How many people could memorize the footwork of 100 people, and then modify their footwork according to their cultivation and figure? Just thinking about it made his scalp go numb. The brains of these formation masters were really not human, they were all monsters beyond imagination. When ordinary people looked at formation masters, it was like how people in Chu Li's past life looked at chess masters. They were too far behind and felt like they were not of the same species. They would inexplicably have a sense of respect for intelligence. Chu Li shook his head. "Finish as soon as possible. We still need to practice the small formations. Why don't we just forget about it? A group of 100 people is enough," Song Qingji said. Chu Li replied, "A formation of 100 people is too inflexible. It's fine on the battlefield, but what about during normal times?" "That's true." Song Qingji nodded. "I'll listen to you, but it's more exhausting. Let's do it bit by bit." Chu Li smiled and nodded. "Let's call it a day." Song Qingji pulled Chu Li towards the main hall. "I'll make the arrangements first. We'll start tomorrow." Chu Li followed him into the hall. The 2 vice hall masters also came in. The 4 of them sat in the main hall, and the 100 people outside began to practice the formation again. They wanted nothing more than to practice the formation until they were extremely familiar with it. They didn't even need to think about it. "For Chu Li's meritorious service this time, I think he should be rewarded with a rank," Song Qingji said. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and looked at him in confusion. Song Qingji's expression was solemn as he looked at the 2 vice hall masters with bright eyes. Emohing said, "It is indeed worthy of a grade's merit." Fu Tianlei nodded in agreement. Song Qingji smiled. "Then it's settled. You'll be rewarded with a grade of merit." Chu Li asked doubtfully, "Hall Master, what's a grade?" "The 9 divisions of the Outland's 9 divisions are all based on grade. 9 is the lowest, and grade 1 is the highest. Of course, there's also the supreme grade, but that's only when one has contributed to the entire Outland." Song Qingji said, "Grade 1 is already the highest grade in the 9 divisions." Chu Li smiled. "Hall Master, I don't have that much merit. It's just some minor repairs. It's nothing much. Although we don't know about formations, we know how great your repairs are." Song Qingji waved his hand. "Chu Li, you don't have to be so humble. Everyone knows it," Emohing said. "Once the formation diagrams are out, the formation masters will no longer pay attention to them, because these things are too trivial and time-consuming. They just let us cultivate the formation according to the diagrams. But Chu Li, you also know that the power of the same formation diagrams can vary greatly." Chu Li frowned. "Is there no formation master who came to help?" "No." Emohing shook his head. Emohing shook his head and said, "Formation grandmasters who can help are too lazy to bother with such trivial matters. There are formation grandmasters who want to help, but can't. Their cultivation levels are not high enough. Fortunately, everyone is like this. It's worth it to hire a formation master, Chu Li said. Emohing shook his head and laughed. No matter how big the price is, it's not worth mentioning in the eyes of a formation master. Chu Li slowly nodded. I see. Chu Li, don't tell me you want to specialize in formations, Song Qingji quickly asked. Chu Li smiled. That's not my ambition. Formations are just a hobby. Song Qingji let out a sigh and smiled. That's true. But it's difficult for you to enter the formation hall. To the formation hall, your identity is more important. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Formations were more important to the Outland. They would not allow an unstable factor like him to mix in. Therefore, no matter how powerful his formations were, the formation hall would not accept him. But to the other sex, he was still in high demand. Chu Li, tell me, what do you want? Song Qingji asked. Chu Li said, Clan leader, I won't hold back then. Just tell me, we won't blink if we have something. Song Qingji waved his hand and said generously. Chu Li's improvement of the formation was no different from doubling the strength of the White Dew Hall or even more. His contribution was too great. If they did not reward him well, they would not be able to make Chu Li wholeheartedly. Even the slightest bit of slacking would be a great loss. Chu Li smiled. What I need the most are star stones. It'll be great if I can get the transformation pill. If not, I can get an antique martial art. Star stones. Song Qingji nodded. No problem. I'll give you 10 star stones of this size. He clenched his fist to show that the crystals were the size of a fist. Chu Li was full of smiles. It was indeed a rank 1 contribution. Song Qingji said, the transformation pill. It's a forbidden item. Chu Li nodded. I saw the bishop of the Longevity Church using it in the lower realm. Song Wuji sent it down, right? Song Wuji. Song Qingji and the other two's expressions changed. The Longevity Church really used the transformation pill? Song Qingji frowned. Chu Li said, I saw it with my own eyes. The bishop of the Longevity Church, Song Jifan, used the transformation pill to become an enlightened master. Then, the heavenly thunder and the deva came to hunt him down. I was even implicated by him and was hit by the deva. How dare Song Wuji? Song Qingji sneered. Emohing said, the thunder pool covers the sky with one hand. It's not surprising that they would do something like this. Song Wuji has always been an unscrupulous person. Should we tell the hall leader? Fu Tianlei asked. Song Qingji thought about it and shook his head. There's no point in telling him. Let's just pretend we don't know. He looked at Chu Li and sighed. The Thunder Pool is very powerful. The Rain Master Palace is far from it. It's better not to provoke Song Wuji. Chu Li frowned. The Thunder Pool is the first among the 9 divisions? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.